We're going to start the meeting. Councillor Duran, are you online?
Yes, I am, sir.
Thank you. Councillor Bernard, he didn't indicate he was going to. What about Julie? Councillor McCabe, did she say she was? Okay. Okay, land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land upon which we gather is Abegwit, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, who are part of the greater community or greater territory of Mi'kma'ki. We recognize the peace and friendship treaties first signed by Mi'kmaq in 1725. We pay our respect to Indigenous elders, past, present, and affirm the history, resilience, and ongoing presence of all Indigenous people living on the island. And I just want to call out to order here. Some of the deputy and some councillors were at the Service Awards today. And I just want to give a shout out for the retirees, Vaughn Doyle, Trent McDonald, Paul Johnston, John Harper, Jennifer McCarran, Gregory Meisner, Blaine Parkman, Linda Gallant, Brooke Gregory, Kevin MacArthur, and Wendy McRae. And I want to thank them, all of them, for their service to City of Charlottetown. As I always say on our motto or slogan, great things happen here. Well, the great things happen here because of employees like the ones I just mentioned, and all the other employees that were recognized for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25, and 30 years of service. And I'm not going to ask Laurel Palmer where she's at, but she's been here with Councillor Tweel and I for some time, and always appreciate Laurel showing up and giving her professional background on planning and development priorities. Oh, yeah. Well, so, don't want to say that right now. We'll get into that later. The backs could be there too. Okay, declarations of conflict of interest. Any? Councillor Duran, yea or nay?
No, I don't. Thank you.
So just to note for the public record, Councillor Bernard and Councillor McCabe are not here. Other priorities or realignment with their schedule couldn't happen for this meeting. Approval of the agenda, there's only one item, and we have the professionals here. So Councillor McKinnon moved, second by Councillor Matard. All those in favor? Councillor Duran?
In favor?
Okay. So, Deputy, I want to turn over to you first because this is your standing committee for planning, development, and heritage. How do you want to start off? And then we can go from there. Thank you.
I think we'll probably just start with our consultant and his presentation, similar to what we heard at the Planning and Heritage Standing Committee. And I would think you'd probably like to go through your report and then maybe hold questions for the end, if that's your preference, or do you want people to interject as we go along?
No,
Just prefer if I could go through the whole presentation and then have questions at the end.
Great.
good.
All right, and then hopefully after that, we have all kinds of questions and discussion because we can stay as late as we want to get all of that stuff flushed out. Over to you.
And Deputy,
Yes.
you've said that take our time, drill through it,
Yes.
because is this the last presentation before we go into the summer?
Yes, and then, because from here, then we start the formal process, which will be, the staff will take this through the planning board with a recommendation for a public hearing, which would potentially happen in September-ish. So, yeah, this is our What You Heard report. This is our timelines of, yep.
And Deputy, I want to thank the Deputy Mayor for everything that she's been doing up to this point and will continue to do, I'm sure, during the summer, right into the fall. So thank you very much. And Michael, Rob, or Jacob, do we start out with Jacob? Okay, can we just 1 second? Jacob, can you just introduce yourself, please?
Of course. My name is Jacob Ritchie. I'm the managing principal of planning with Fathom Studio.
Okay.
I've worked on this project for the last year with your staff team.
Okay. Councillor Tweel.
Yeah, it's in regards to the, excuse me, email we received from the Deputy Mayor, Chair of Planning regarding different facets of the Accelerator Fund. So that email came out, and I think Acting CAO also sent out an email. And I want to know how that aligns with the proposed zoning and development bylaw. Is it related, interrelated? Is there a connection? There's not a connection. And then I want to know about the timing, because there's a lot of talk about the Accelerator Fund and where we're at as a city. And then, we got that email and they're unveiling or rolling out some type of marketing or public relations platform. And I got many questions around that because we're hearing the presentation tonight. And again, how does it relate, interrelate? Is there a connection? There's not a connection. The timing, wondering about the timing of what was rolled out here in the last 24 hours. And I'm just not sure what position that puts City Council in. So I wanted to ask those questions just to see what the impact and effect is.
I'm going to turn it over to the chair first because this is the committee she's chaired for the last 3.5+ years, and she's been part of this.
So
Deputy?
Yep, thank you, Your Worship. So short answer, Councillor Tweel, the accessory dwelling unit what would we call them, pre-approved drawings have nothing to do with the zoning and development bylaw. The only factor where the zoning and development bylaw, the new bylaw proposed or the existing bylaw, is about how many accessory dwelling units you may or may not be able to put on your property. So it has absolutely nothing to do with what we're doing tonight. It was just one of the initiatives when we applied for half money 2 years ago. That was just one of the initiatives. And so that's just being moved. The goalpost is just moving on that one because our timelines are coming along. So it just happens to be happening, just like the Heritage Preservation Bylaw. It just all happened to be happening around the same time because all of the deadlines are similar, but still stand alone.
Councillor Twill.
Yeah, okay, so Accelerator Fund does deal with planning issues, correct? But as you just pointed out, there's no impact and effect. It's not related. It's not interrelated. It has nothing to do with the proposed zoning, zoning and development bylaw that we're going to hear tonight. So if the residents start asking questions, okay, what are you doing with the Accelerator Fund? And is that to initiate? Is it to spark more development in the neighborhoods and communities? We can honestly say to the residents that are impacted in these respective neighborhoods and communities that that program that you're going to see, that itinerary that was laid out to us in the last 24 hours, has nothing to do with the proposed zoning and development bylaw, and it's an entity unto its own, right?
Councillor Twill. You know
Right.
that we approved 8 initiatives, part of half, which talked about increasing density. There are 28 milestones with the 8 initiatives, which are also about density. So, yeah, what Jacob is presenting here tonight, I think, will be reiterated by our chair. Deputy?
And- And just to note, the pre-approved accessory dwelling unit designs, council approved that a year and a half ago. It's just being, the process just takes a while for staff to roll it out. So we've already approved the concept of that initiative, but that won't reflect anything on what we're doing in terms of our zoning and development bylaw. Those pre-approved ADUs will roll out whether we have an old bylaw or a new bylaw. Mike, if there's anything else, not to put you on the spot, if I've missed anything, feel free to chime in.
Mike, if you can just sum it up, because we have to get on with the presentation. Michael?
Thank you, Madam Deputy. I think you've summarized it well. This is a distinct initiative from the zoning and development bylaw. The update that went out to council was regarding the pre-approved housing designs, so effectively pre-reviewed housing designs that are available to the general public if they want to build one of these on their properties. Obviously, right now, they would have to do so within the existing regulations in the city's zoning development bylaw. If council chooses to change that bylaw in the future through this separate process that Jacob and Donna are leading, then the approach on, or the eligibility for properties to use those designs could change.
So, just to follow up.
Let's just wrap it up.
Yeah,
Thank
okay,
you very
so,
much. Thank you.
so this particular program, the Accelerator Fund that was, I guess, supported by council a year and a
Yes.
half ago, that was done under the old zoning and development bylaw, not what we're hearing tonight, correct?
No, Deputy, we're going to end this debate. Just, could you clear it up and then we'll move on?
I'm trying to understand.
Yeah?
So the Housing Accelerator Fund, the $10.2 million that was
Reduced.
approved from the federal government to the city of Charlottetown, was approved based on 8 initiatives. And one of those initiatives happened to be the pre-approved ADU designs. That's one of the
Yeah, 8 initiatives.
one of the 8. The zoning and development bylaw is one of the 8. The heritage preservation bylaw is one of the 8. I can't name them all. So these are all reflective of funding that we received, but they're still standalone projects. So tonight, we're talking about the zoning and development bylaw, which is probably the biggest of the 8 initiatives.
Okay, Councilor Twill, let's just have Jacob start this. Laurel, and Donna, you will be part of it? Okay. Jacob, do you want to start off? Oh, we get slides. Great.
To the council. It's been a great joy to be in Charlottetown over the last year, working on this project and working with all of you and meeting you at the community engagement events and getting us a chance to present here and to the committees with the deputy mayor. And we're quite pleased to be here tonight to walk through not only what we've been doing recently, but what we've done since we started this project. We thought it was a good opportunity at Committee of the Whole in this moment to review everything we've done and then get to where we are today and how we go forward. This is a 48-slide presentation, but I promise you it'll be engaging and interesting throughout. And I do appreciate that we can hold questions to the end so that we don't get sidetracked and I can keep it tight and give you guys an interesting presentation of our work. So I'm going to introduce a little bit about myself and the team from the city that's been working on this. We're going to talk about a project overview, the regulatory framework, the changes from your current zoning and development bylaw, community inputs to these new regulations, and then the pathway to consideration for adoption. So introducing myself, I already did that to kick off, but I am Jacob Ritchie. I work with Fathom Studio. I've been working in land use planning around the Maritimes for 20 years. To my left is Laurel, who's been part of the staff team here for, I think, a little bit longer. We have Donna, the manager of policy planning here, but also Brad has been a huge part of this team as well throughout, and I really appreciate the support of staff throughout. My colleague Ruby Shepard has been joining me on trips to PEI over the last year as well. You've probably had a chance to engage with Ruby, and she too has met a lot of your constituents and spent a lot of time in community talking about what this zoning and development bylaw means for community into the future. She couldn't be here tonight, but she will be here at our next meeting, and she's, again, learned a lot and been very, very grateful to have the experience with the City of Charlottetown. So we're going to overview the zoning and development bylaw, how it implements the city's planning direction, and what has changed from the current regulation and how community input has shaped the revised draft. It has come up a little bit that I am from Nova Scotia. That is a fact I don't want to shy from, but I want to address it Fathom Studio is a Dartmouth, Nova Scotia-based firm. Our staff are from all over the world, and we work on projects all over the Maritimes. I've just shown a couple here, but we're currently working in Oromocto. We just finished a project in Wolfville, very similar to this project. We've done a waterfront master plan for the city of Charlottetown in the past, city of Moncton Vision Lands. Our architecture team is building the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center in downtown Halifax. We build public spaces, and we work really across scales of cities, from cities like Halifax to cities like Shelburne and Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, and smaller communities. We're working on the North Shore right now in PEI as well with Marie and the team over there. So we are working on all scales. We have experience across the Maritimes. And the same way we like to bring experiences from New Brunswick and Nova Scotia to PEI, we're very grateful that we get to bring our experiences from PEI to our projects in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia at the same time. So the project overview for this project, the City of Charlottetown is updating planning documents. On the left, we have your current documents, or your former documents, I should say. The City of Charlottetown official plan went through a process between 2022 to 2026, and you adopted it in 2025, or even 2024, I believe, and then in 2026 it ascended at the provincial government to become your official plan. When an official plan is updated, it's your responsibility as a city to then come with the regulations that will let you implement the policy direction of your official plan. That's the process we've been working on through 2025 and 2026, is updating the zoning and development bylaw. The zoning and development bylaw translates the city's growth, housing, land use, climate, and infrastructure objectives into clear rules for development on private lands. It implements the new official plan direction. It modernizes your current bylaw. It provides clearer rules for applicants, staff, council, and the public, supports more predictable development review, and provides many possible futures for housing in Charlottetown. When you start a bylaw review, your official plan update kicks it off. You've changed your policy direction, so your regulations have to be reviewed. We start by doing some analysis. We do some reporting to make sure staff is on board with the direction we're taking. We do that work across departments, led by your planning team. We initiate community engagement, and then we make a draft of the zoning and development bylaw. We edit that draft based on feedback from departments internally and consult with stakeholders and landowners, and then we re-engage on that. And that's what we've done in the most recent round of engagement, was re-engaging with community after we had spoken to them in 2025. And that little check mark very near the right-hand side of this is where we are. And where the process ends is with an adoption of the zoning and development bylaw. So the regulatory framework on the island has planning documents that stem from a planning act. So it's a provincial regulation, or sorry, a provincial act with regulations that tell you how planning can exist in municipalities on the island. An official plan is the highest level policy document for growth and development. And like I've said several times already, just reiterating that the regulation that we put in the zoning and development bylaw is to implement your official plan. You also have strategies, plans, and policies that feed into this. And this is when we've gone across your organization with the draft zoning and development bylaw. It's your environment group, your transportation group, your parks group, your events group, and tourism group that give us comments. And the tools those groups use are their own strategies, plans, and policies. Those are in the white on this slide because those aren't regulatory documents determined by an act of the provincial government. Those are documents that your team creates to guide their work. So we've assessed those and taken the advice of staff on those teams to try to make our draft zoning and development bylaw better and more representative of all the work that council has led with staff over the last 5 years. So in the 2025 official plan, at a glance, you have a new growth strategy, you have clear land use structures, you've added climate resiliency as a core priority. Equity, inclusion, and accountability make a big part of the policy direction this city wants to go, and it directed staff and us to look at more housing options across the city. The official plan future land use map identified the downtown core, the downtown periphery, and the downtown waterfront as areas that are distinct within the 500 lot area, where you have different things going on, whether they're modern redevelopments, protection of heritage, or residential neighborhoods. You have workscapes, which are your airport, your institutional zones, where you have a lot of the jobs in the city right now. This introduced something called corridors, which took the main streets in and out of the city and said, if this is where all the traffic is, we should probably make sure we're intensifying use around there so that we're taking advantage of what's already happening with T3 and with transportation investments that have happened around the city. We have nodes where some of those major lines intersect, and we create higher density opportunities because you want to really take an opportunity to densify and create more opportunity for different sorts of activities. So we've gone even higher at the nodes. And then finally, we have institutional parks and public spaces, natural areas, gateway zones, and urban expansion zones. So the last two are really about how a city grows, and all the rest are really about how you grow within areas you already have developed. So to speak to the Housing Accelerator Fund, slides 14 and 15, as was suggested, the Housing Accelerator Fund does lead to some of the work that we've done in the zoning and development bylaw update. It was a federal program administered by CMHC, providing funding directly to local authorities, and you are one of 179 Canadian jurisdictions that took advantage of the Housing Accelerator Fund to create new documents that lead to some of the outcomes that CMHC and the federal government were hoping to spur across Canada. Spur across Canada, not spurn. Housing Accelerator Fund initiatives, there are 8, as was mentioned when we were speaking before my presentation. Implement a new official plan and zoning bylaw, create an accessory dwelling unit program, create an e-permitting system, reduce parking requirements for increased density, redevelopment for high-density apartments, incentives for missing middle housing, density bonusing and clear design standards, and removing exclusionary zoning and promoting density. When the CMHC Housing Accelerator Fund application went in, you can see the parallels between your official plan and these 8 strategies. So these were already things Charlottetown was doing in many cases, and you were able to work with the federal government to form funding around these efforts. And this project does tick off a few of these boxes, most notably box number 1, implement a new official plan and zoning bylaw. So how do the regulations change from what's currently there? There are 7 key changes in our draft. There is a simplified zoning structure. There are revised building permits and development pathways. We have reduced and eliminated parking requirements and parking minimums. We have development streamlining. We have allowed ADUs in certain areas. We've allowed for administrative variances, and we've created an environmental and flood risk framework. These are the major changes that should be of interest to you when you're reviewing the top line changes in this zoning and development bylaw. Something that we're believe in as a firm, and we've helped municipalities with in other places, is the reduction of administrative complexity. Making things simpler for landowners to understand what they can do on their property helps landowners understand their future. Making things simpler for administrators makes their job easier so they can handle more volume, and making things simpler for folks in elected office makes it easier for you to explain to your constituents as well. So when bylaws begin to live a long life, they grow zones. It's like organic somehow. The more a bylaw lives, the more you add in special zones. You deal with a certain case by making a new zone. And you can go from a simple start to these very complicated and large and ornery bylaws. So in Charlottetown, you actually had 13 different zones for residential uses in the bylaw. And that's the sort of thing that really leads to confusion when you're one neighborhood to the next have different ways of defining things like height or the what can happen in a residential building. So getting to a singular set of terms is a really powerful way to improve the efficiency of your staff and be clearer in community. What's on the left here, I don't expect you to be able to read these screens, but what I want to show you is just like the generalized future land use from your old official plan, you now have a generalized future land use that has led to a draft zoning map. So we, in writing a regulation like a zoning and development bylaw, do carry from the official plan. The official plan uses a map called the generalized future land use map. We've taken that map and converted it into these zones that look a lot like your current zones, but have some key differences that we'll go through tonight. Again, difficult to read on the scale of this, but we did want to talk about this. We You can see the same color pattern and that same development pattern that we talked about in the official plan with corridors and nodes and residential areas, institutional areas. That plays out in the zoning map too, but you'll see shades of the colors to show the variation in the types of uses that are there. For example, residential went from the 13 zones that you had before that typified different residential uses to down to 3. So we now have residential neighborhood, we have medium density residential, and higher order residential. I expect over time, as this land use, or as this zoning and development regulation lives its life, you will be asked to create new zones, and you may do that, and 3 may grow to 5. But we're starting back at something simple, and we'll grow from there. We have revised development pathways. There are 3 potential pathways for development now. As of right approval process, again, we want to have as much as possible happening through as of right processes because it reduces overhead cost of your city by reducing the staff time needed to process permits and get to a development. We do have a site plan approval process when your development staff want to know a little bit more detail. So if something's going to be building new roads, if something's going to be having an impact on its neighbors that's a bit more impactful, and you need a process, your development officers are going to have the power to approve things through site plan approval that will give them some discretion to get more information from a developer than they would have through an as-of-right process. And finally, there are still limited development agreement approval processes where DAs will come in and be considered in discretionary processes at this council for you all to weigh in when something is very impactful and couldn't be predicted. So when there are areas of this city that are unknown what their future may hold, we've put regulation or zoning over top of them to say, if and when you're ready to develop this, you're going to enter a process where staff will consider your application and then bring it through a discretionary process. So those still do exist, but we have limited where those exist. So you're not doing as much of that as you may have been to date in your time on council. We've created a 2-stage building permit process to make the building permit the only permit you need for certain projects. So you don't have to go through a development permit process, but you still have the planners doing part of the review. So we've introduced a building permit that includes a stage 1 planning review to ensure that the planning rules are not being violated by the building permit application. And then that moves on to a building review by your building officials. This is asking for coordination within your team to have your building officials and your development officers working together. But again, for simpler projects, we don't want to go through completely separate development permit, building permit steps, and we put them all into the building permit to avoid the development permit altogether. We've tried to clarify variances in this version to not be open-ended. So we have created technical variances where properties have site conditions that mean the regular rules for the site can't be met. So sometimes you might have sloping conditions, you might have an odd angular lot, you might have something happening on your property that is stopping you from meeting the regular regulations, and they allow you to vary certain aspects of your property with the decision by the development officer, and we've limited that variation to 10% of the dimension for certain parts of a project. So rather than varying something completely or adding excess density to a site, variances are meant to solve problems that exist on unique conditions on a private site. They are not meant to add density to a site. So we're allowing technical variances, but we're not allowing variances completely to the intent of the zone. This is a change for Charlottetown. It's one of the more significant changes that we haven't actually talked about as much as we've talked about some of the ADU stuff. But we think this is strong. Again, predictability is really important in private markets. Knowing what you can build, knowing the value of your property, and taking the discretion out of it is powerful because it means you know what you can do and you don't have to wonder if you're going to get the votes. So you're trading some of that risk-taking for certainty. And when we have strong certainty, we get a lot of private investment. We've introduced built form requirements. You've always had certain Boltford standards in all your land use bylaws. The building can be so high, the building can be so wide, you have to be set back from the side. But in this case, we've started to create even more zoning rules to dictate when buildings step back. So we've talked about this a bit before, but a lot of buildings, the cheapest way to build a building is a rectangle, straight up. every floor is the same footprint, right? And everything's predictable for you as you go up. But when you get into 5 and 6 story buildings that go straight up from the ground, you get really inhospitable conditions on the ground, on the sidewalk and around the building. So what we're asking in this bylaw is whenever a building's going up above 3 and 4 stories, at that 3rd or 4th story, you're going to push the building back a little bit, and you're going to break the facade of the building, and you're going to create what we call a street wall. And that street wall is always going to be somewhere between 2 and 3 stories, occasionally 4 in some zones. So that street wall becomes what you experience when you walk down the street. Because the other parts of the building are stepped back a little bit, you don't notice them from the street. You have a street wall on all the streets in the 500 lot area and on many of the streets outside. It just may be 1 or 2 stories right now. And actually, when you walk down these streets in the downtown, it's usually 3 stories. The tradition, that was the height of the buildings downtown. And then sometimes there's a taller building back behind them, like on the mall site or across the street from here at the hotel. And those buildings are in that step back area where you can go up. But when you're on the street, you still experience the 2 to 3 stories of the building. You don't experience the full height the same way. That's one of the biggest articulations we've added. We've also added rules for how doorways and entrances are considered along the way so that you don't have these long blank walls, right? So long blank walls are really difficult for pedestrians. They become monotonous, they become less interest, and they become really not pleasant to walk on. So that's really why we've added some of this request for developers to make the ground floor active. So those are the really big built form requirements we've put in the places where we've added density. Housing choice and 4 units as of right. So this is a big topic for us. The updated bylaw supports more housing choice in existing neighborhoods to align with the goals of the official plan. The draft enables 4 units as of right where all requirements are met, and the accessory dwelling unit standards manage the built form and compatibility. We have some examples in this presentation where we'll talk about this a bit more, but it has been a focus of the project. So this has come up a fair amount. The 2 unit example can be met by either putting an accessory dwelling unit inside your home or keeping your home as a single unit and adding an accessory dwelling unit. The 3 unit example includes 1 attached ADU to your principal residence and a detached ADU in the rear yard. Or the 3 unit can include 2 attached ADUs in addition to your principal residence. And finally, the 4 unit example is a home and a site that can contain 2 attached accessory dwelling units attached to your single family principal residence and an ADU somewhere else on the property. And that's how we've defined 4 units. We do have maps that show where 4 units does fit on your properties with the current built or the current urban fabric, and we'll get to that in a moment. Just as interesting, and one of the other big changes in here are these future growth areas. These future growth areas haven't popped up with as much feedback to us because I think people know these are areas where you should grow. These are on corridors that have a large amount of commercial use today. They're at intersections that are prominent and already are well known to everyone. And by adding height in these areas, no one has come back to us and said, well, we really never saw that coming. Most of these are large strip malls, large properties where there's a large parking lot that can be redeveloped. And that's why we've chosen to put this sort of future growth area focused on that. The bylaw for corridor zones, which is not these growth nodes, but in the corridor zones, we are allowing 6 stories as of right, so long as the conditions are met. And those conditions are mostly focused on the depth of the lot. So where you have a very deep lot and you're a long way away from residential areas, you can put a 6-story building at the street, so long as you're not going to be directly abutting your residential neighbors on your backyard. We have included parking reforms throughout. We've reduced the parking requirement completely in the 500 lot area. So new developments will have no municipal parking minimum required. This doesn't mean new developments won't have parking. We're simply saying the municipality is not regulating it. You're stepping away as the regulator and saying, manage your own parking, see what you can do, see what works for you, and see if you save costs in your construction, and that can be passed on both in terms of getting more buildings built, but also in reducing the impact on the developer's bottom line. Because a lot of people who live in your 500 lot area are probably walking to do a lot of their trips regardless. We show a little bit on the right-hand side just how common this has become. There are 3,092 cities across North America that have reduced or eliminated parking requirements in the last decade. We know that just because everyone else is doing doesn't mean you should do it. But I will say you are not trailblazers in this regard. Many cities are doing this, and it hasn't led to the catastrophe of parking issues that people thought may happen. Environmental and flood risk management became a big deal in working through this with the community. The draft bylaw includes specific technical requirements to address flood resilience, primarily focused on sea level rise and storm surges along the waterfront. So protect buildings from coastal flooding. The bylaw mandates that all new development bordering on the waterfront have a minimum finished floor elevation in an agreed vertical datum. So rather than using horizontal buffers from watercourses, if you're in these zones, we're saying you have to build up before you can start to build your building so that you have some separation from that flood risk. The official plan includes a conservation zone in which development was to be restricted due to mapped environmental features that exist. We've converted this into an overlay zone, and that has been an effective way to think about how your development officers will engage with the Provincial Department of Environment when we know development's happening in sensitive areas. So the community has provided a fair amount of input on this. Our main engagement themes are housing density and 4 units as of right, everything about the ADUs, the conservation zones, parking reform and transportation, environmental protection and stormwater, zoning map corrections, and definitions, drafting, and technical corrections. This is what we heard from the community when we went out with our drafts. What's amazing to us really is what I said about the growth corridors and the growth nodes. Some of the most significant change that is in this zoning and development bylaw is on your growth nodes and your growth corridors, where we're allowing as of right multi-unit buildings on sites that are currently primarily used for commercial purposes. That did not come up. And I think it didn't come up because people expect those sites to develop and do something. But when you start to get into the residential neighborhoods and you talk about the ADUs and the 4 units as of right, that strikes a nerve for everyone where they live. So if you tell someone that there's going to be an apartment building in the parking lot of the Sobeys, they don't get as upset, perhaps, as hearing about a new accessory dwelling unit in their neighborhood. It's just a scale difference because you're used to seeing development around commercial areas. So I'm positing perhaps that's why we didn't hear a lot about it, but we do intend to talk about it, and we don't want to bury that change just because we didn't hear about it from the public. So after we went out with our draft, we did make changes. We removed the Eastern Gateway Zone and put in the zoning that matches the development or the CDA rights that are in place. The Conservation Zone was removed and replaced with the Environmental Constraints Overlay. ADU permissions were refined. Flood risk data and datum references were updated through working with the Department of Environment and your own internal mapping teams. Document cleanup throughout. We changed text, created fixed technical errors, and fixed terminology throughout. And we refined policies such as the height schedules when we heard that there were issues on certain areas. There were a couple specific examples where we had the heights that were not felt to be appropriate, and we changed those on the maps. And there were areas where we had perhaps went too far in asserting something that should happen on private land, so we've sort of clawed that back in terms of waterfront development, where we were looking for boardwalks and development around certain properties, so we've pulled that back as well. So I'll go through each topic very briefly. On housing density, we heard strong support from many respondents for more housing options. 4 units as of right was a visible topic, and there was concerns about neighborhood character. We also heard requests for more density near UPI, Holland College, and other major service centers, which we felt we had done, but we wanted to note that several people said they wanted to see more. What we changed, the 4 units as of right direction was maintained but refined. References to up to 4 units was refined in the RN zone to avoid conflicts. Growth areas and downtown permissions were clarified, and built form standards we continued to manage compatibility. Accessory dwelling units, we heard that there was broad support for ADU permissions. There were concerns about minimum lot size requirements. There was requests for flexibility for heritage carriage houses. There were concerns about STRs. and there were some issues with cross-referencing and numbering. What changed? We removed the minimum lot size requirement for one accessory dwelling unit. Existing carriage houses on designated heritage properties would be considered for detached ADUs in any zone, subject to review by the heritage team. ADU cross-references were corrected and the provisions were clarified. This map was requested, and we spoke about it at committee. We wanted to show in the RN and DN zones, which are the zones that are your lowest density zones, where you could build 3 and 4 units. So everything in white is not zoned RN or DN. There are some RN zones that are in white, but they are more than 2 acres, and we didn't include them in this conversation. If we think you own an RN zone property that's more than 2 acres, you're probably not going to build just 4 units on it. You're probably going to subdivide it at some point in the future. So we've excluded the larger than 2 acre lots. What was left after the lot coverage requirements is everything that is in yellow can technically get 4 units if they choose to put 2 attached ADUs in their home and a detached ADU somewhere else on their property. Those yellow properties are large enough to support that based on the rules we've written. Everything in red is not. What you'll see is there's a sweet point in subdivisions where we were developing subdivisions with larger than quarter-acre lots. The newer subdivisions aren't actually eligible for 4 units because the lots have become smaller and more modern subdivisions. But in the 70s and 80s and into the 90s, some of these subdivisions actually were quite generous in the lot size, and you can fit a secondary suite on those properties. Lewis Point stands out. Some of the Eastern Gateway properties stand out. And there's some other areas on the west end towards the North River, obviously, where there are very large lots. So we will talk about this, and I'm sure we'll come back to it in the discussion. We were also asked for some neighborhood examples. So these are aerial photos of areas of Charlottetown. We did anonymize them, but we wanted to show the scale of what happens in neighborhoods, and I apologize. If we want more context, we can talk about that, but we felt it was best to leave it anonymous so we're not pointing out individual homes when we did this analysis. So this is what a maximum-sized detached ADU would look like on a site in an RN zone where there are neighbors at a fairly close distance. We've put the setbacks there, the 6-meter setback from the rear yard, 1.8 meters from the side yard, and you can see where an ADU would be placed. I'm sure we'll come back to this as well. Here's another example on a larger lot where that is the maximum size accessory dwelling unit that would be allowed on this lot due to the size limits we've put on the ADUs. You can see how little of the total lot space is taken up by the ADU, but you can also see, and what becomes obvious in Charlottetown, is how low the lot coverage is on so many of your single-family homes. Because they are fairly large lots, and sometimes with modest homes, you have quite a lot of allowance. Very few homes are at their lot coverage maximum right now, so many lots are going to be able to fit it so long as they meet the minimum lot size. But again, with the side yard standards and the rear yard standards, you can see these ADUs are not going to be in a place where they're causing privacy issues per se, because the lots are pretty generous and people tend to be farther than the 1.8 meter minimum side yard setback throughout your residential RN neighborhoods. And finally, even in the 500 lot area where this example is, you can fit the ADU, but what's interesting to note about this is there's so many registered heritage properties that other considerations start to come into play for whether or not this would even be allowed to be built based on its consideration of its neighbors. But again, even on these smaller lots, we have the 2.4 meter front yard setback, the 6 meter rear yard setback, and the 1.8 meter side yard setback. And you're going to see these ADUs aren't going into places where they're going to be intruding upon people's privacy, or if they are, it's no more than the current buildings already do. So those are just 3 examples of how an ADU may fit on site, and we thought it'd be useful to demonstrate, and we can go back to talk that through a bit more. We found the visuals helpful when we get into the conversation because we know there's a lot of concern around how an ADU fits on site. Moving on to the conservation zone, we heard there was support for environmental protection. We heard there was concern about unclear conservation zone boundaries from the official plan. There were concerns about mapping accuracy from the official plan, and there were concerns about legal enforceability and underlying zoning rights. So what we changed was we removed that conservation zone because the maps we had based it on did not have a solid enough data footing for us to put regulations in place that would minimize people's development rights. And what we've introduced is an environmental constraints overlay. And what an overlay zone does is it's a trigger to your staff to look into the Department of Environment regulations around some of the environmentally sensitive areas, but it doesn't create new restrictions from a municipal perspective on the land. You're really leaning on your partners at the provincial government. The Eastern Gateway Zone, there was a secondary planning process in Eastern Gateway that was pretty specific in what it developed. And when we had put this through, we didn't meet the standard for that, so we updated this with the support of Laurel and the team to get the plan to better match what was just approved in the secondary plan for Eastern Gateway. Parking and transportation. We did hear support for reducing parking minimums in developments. We did hear interest in eliminating parking requirements in downtown and the growth areas, and there was a recognition that parking reform should align with transit and active transportation. There was also a concern about supply of parking in the 500 lot area. We heard that from the CDAC, and we heard that from members of the public who came out to our meetings. So what we changed, we kept the reduced parking requirements in strategic areas. We continued to consider transit proximity, and we better aligned the housing and complete community objectives with the parking approach. And then broader reform can happen through future transportation and corridor planning. But as it stands right now, you still do require parking in the corridor zones and the growth node zones. We heard concerns about environment and flood risk, storm surge as well, not just the flood risk from rain coming down, but also from storm surge coming up from the ocean. We're to update CGVD 28 to CGVD 2013. This is a technical standard for vertical datums based on the Canadian standards. There's concern about watercourse and wetland setbacks, and there was interest in stormwater approaches such as swales, ditches, and holding ponds. So we changed the flood risk data based on better data from the province. We made the minimum floor area elevation 3.67 meters, and we applied it to ground use floors bordering a tidal waterfront. The datum reference was updated from CGVD 28 to CGVD 2013, and the conservation zone was removed and replaced with environmental constraints overlay in Schedule E. And again, a reference just clarifying that the environmental group at the province has jurisdiction over so much of this, so that's really where we're pointing your staff is to work with the province when the development in these areas comes up. This is a picture of the draft environmental constraints map. So this is an amalgam of a series of data sources. We show water courses, we show 10-meter contour lines, we show sloped land inventory in pink where the slopes are too great or where development could impact the stability of the slope. We show area in red with potential development restrictions. We show wetlands, and we show the CRIS flood risk. So PEI has one of the best flood risk data sources in Canada through the CRIS system, and we've just taken that directly into the City of Charlottetown's mapping to address the potential for risk to your citizens. We did some technical cleanup. I know this is important to make sure we know, we want to be honest about it. When you get numbering wrong, you can lose faith in the document. So we've fixed our section numbering and cross-referencing. Really, many eyes helps us find all of those issues. Capitalization, grammar, spelling, figure titles, things like that. And then policy and mapping requirements. I referenced this earlier, but we removed Part 611 about the waterfront zone so that we only apply this downtown on the waterfront rather than to all 500 lot waterfront zones. We made zoning changes for developments on recently subdivided lots with updates in all of our maps. We made policy addition for height schedules to create it for special areas, and we made fixes to zoning to lots that are currently used for parking. So from here, your pathway to consideration for adoption. In July or August, we will have a planning board meeting. It's to be determined if we take the July date or the August date. We will present the updated draft at planning board and that will be ahead of a public meeting of council. In September, we will do a public meeting of council that will then lead to a council resolution, first and second reading of council. So this is the timeline we're on for adopting the zoning and development bylaw. There are several more points where we'll hear from the public, or there's one major point, sorry, the public meeting of council, but we'll be back with planning board to give feedback to the staff team and our team on how to make this document better. Council is not being asked to review every edit line by line tonight. The purpose is to understand our major policy changes and show you these directions where you should look. We want to find a way for everyone to agree on the document enough to get it adopted and through. The current bylaw needs to be updated to align with the official plan. The revised draft is intended to provide clearer rules, more predictable review, and better outcomes for residents, applicants, staff, and council, as I said. Thank you. Now we can go to questions. I appreciate getting through the whole presentation.
Jacob, you did a great job, and just keep those up. Do we get a copy of this?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
I think,
Because I looked through my documents, was it sent out already? Oh. Okay, could you? Yeah, that's what I mean, could you put it on the OneDrive? Okay, Deputy, you want to start? What's your preference? You're the lead
I'd
on
say
it?
we just open it up for some questions or conversation. I mean, yeah, I'd just say we, open it up.
Lots to digest.
Yeah, lots to digest. I mean, especially for people just hearing the What You Heard report for the first time. I mean, some of us that sit on the committee, standing committee, have heard this a few times. But, I mean, it's, you did a fantastic job giving it to us in good, clear language, so I
Yes.
thank you for that. And I'm sure Councillor Tweel appreciates the comparisons from the old bylaw and the new one, because that was something you specifically wanted to see, what was different. I see a lot of, I saw a lot of things that had been identified from the first draft that were, we closed the loop on those and we fixed them up. The one thing I wanted to I'll start off by saying, can we clarify 4 units, because that's the hot discussion, 4 units as of right. Remind me what the lot size, minimum lot size has to be, and have we included in there that one of the 4 units, and whether you can get 3, 2, or 4, must be your principal residence? So that's my first question I'll go with, and then I'll leave it for others.
we'll be coming back to you. I know
Yeah.
Councilor McTaggart is ready with the green light. Jacob, would you like to take that on, sir? And what slide would we go to, if you want to have a reference for slide? Slide
Yes.
connection?
I'll flip through to the slide that shows the ADUs. So these, on the slide on the left is the language from the bylaw. An attached ADU in a single detached dwelling, semi-detached, or duplex dwelling is allowed. You are allowed to have a second attached ADU in a single detached dwelling if your minimum lot size is 1,130 meters squared, a little over 11,000 square feet, which is a quarter acre. The detached ADU is allowed on a single detached lot, a semi-lot, or a duplex lot with a minimum area of 500 square meters. Similarly, you're allowed to have that as well as the 2 attached ADUs if you're on that quarter acre lot or larger. So it's the quarter acre that allows you your second detached ADU as well as your detached ADU, which gets you up to the 4. And yes, one of those units needs to be the principal residence. There is no clarification that it has to be the single detached. You can be the principal resident living in the detached ADU. There's no clarification to say that you have to live in one of the units. but you do have to have proof of residency on the property.
Thank you. So just to follow up on that, so if your property only allows for one ADU besides the main home or two, if you can only get to two or three, does the same rule apply? One of them still has to be your principal residence, whether it's two, three, or four?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. There, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. We'll stay right on this slide here, because I guess this is where I was going to ask you to go. So I guess I'm just trying to wrap my head around a little bit. I want to go right to 4-unit example. So just first, before we start, the terminology, I guess when we talk about 4 units as of right, it's up to 4 units as of right, correct? The up to is, okay, just want to clarify that. So if we use the extreme example here of 4 units, in the bottom right-hand corner of the presentation slide on page 26, is that in relation to the pink box there, like, or is it, because that would be the minimum lot size is 1,300 or 1,100 square meters? Is that, would relate to that? Because it wouldn't relate to the bottom one, because the bottom was a minimum lot size of 500?
That's right. So in the bottom right-hand corner, the 4-unit example, those boxes, those dashed lines in these examples aren't drawn to scale, obviously, but that is an example of a quarter-acre lot that puts 2 attached ADUs in the building, that is the single detached unit, and 1 ADU on the property.
And just by virtue of the 4 units there, 4 different colors there almost, I guess, right? Or 3, there's.
That's right.
Like the light blue would be a top unit. It looks like a basement unit, kind of like a light pink.
Yep.
We'll call it an orange on the side, and then a pink on the back there as well.
Correct.
So if I had a minimum lot area of 500 square meters, I certainly couldn't put those 4 units on there. Which one relates to that? The 2-unit example?
The 2-unit, so having 1 attached ADU would be the example. The 2-unit attached ADU, the middle, so really the first
two-
3,
all the
all of the
twos
2-unit examples
Would probably fit
would be
there.
available to
And then
you.
all the 3 and above would be in the 1,100 square meter?
You could do the 1 detached ADU and 1 attached, so the middle right example could exist on a property between 500 square meters and 1,100, so between the quarter acre and the small size. The one you couldn't do is the 2 units inside the building,
Or I'm not following that.
the way it's drafted now. In all these cases, I will add, there are other requirements here, like the attached ADU has no more than 2 bedrooms. So these accessory dwelling units are limited in size by bedroom count. Each accessory dwelling unit has its parking space
Yeah.
off street as well, unless you're within 400 meters of a bus stop, in which case only 1 is required. The main dwelling unit is the principal residence for the owner. And one of the units, but not both, can be used as a short-term rental as long as the operator host is present in the principal dwelling during the stay. So there is an allowance for STR if you're on property.
Okay, so what's oh, sure. So what's interesting is I continually hear all of these conditions or things that are around this, almost as if to present it as a deterrent for somebody to do that, in the sense of not realistic that all these things would line up and then someone would have that. That's how I'm interpreting sometimes when we say, well, you have to be the primary residence and you have to do this and you have to do that and you have to do this. That to me is somewhat painting a picture as if it's not likely that somebody would take. Now, if you jump to page 35, because this is really where this gets my attention. So when I see all of that yellow in what I would consider, and being a lifelong resident of Charlottetown, established neighborhoods, mine included, so for full transparency, Ward 2, is what it's saying is that could happen. So you're telling me that bottom picture that I asked you about 2 minutes ago in the bottom lower right-hand corner could theoretically, or not theoretically, technically, it's not even theoretically, it's technically could go in every single one of these yellow boxes on this map, regardless of whether or not someone's gonna live there and do this and do all those stipulations. That's hypothetical. We don't know what anybody would do, other than, we don't know, maybe today's landscape in Charlottetown might suggest that people won't do that. But 20 years' time, I have no idea what people are gonna do in 20 years' time with that condition. So am I understanding correctly, just the way this is right now, on this slide, anybody, somebody, everybody in these yellow spaces can do that 4 units as of right in there, up to 4 units as of right in those yellow boxes? I see more yellow than I see less purple, I guess is what I would be observing here. It's my own observation. Is that correct in my assumption?
Through the mayor to the council, that's correct. The yellow is areas where it would be as of right.
Okay. And understanding all those other conditions have to line up, but I don't care about the conditions because they can be met. Because if we were putting all these conditions in that we're suggesting that, well, you know, it's very unlikely that all those conditions would be met, then why do we even bother having 4 units as of right, you know, like in that sense? Because if it's highly unlikely that anybody's ever going to be able to accomplish that. Because I think the last time you guys were here and I brought the same, I think we were over in the next room and I asked the same question. And there was examples like, well, in Moncton they did this and nobody seems to be doing that or whatever, right? I think it was some examples you gave around that. And I apologize if it wasn't you, but I think it was what you might have presented on that. And so I'm worried about that. I'm worried about the possibility, not, whether it's technically not that the probability isn't there. I'm not rolling the dice on probability. I'm rolling it on what can be done here. So I just need that confirmation in my head. I spoke to you as well at one of the sessions and want to reconfirm. I'd love to see, there was 2 maps that you showed the previous time. I think there was a 500 square meter one and the 11. So was this?
This is the same, just put on one map, where the
map,
red
okay.
is sort of those between 500 and 1100.
So the no means up, that could probably go up to that 2 range. that
2
we
or
were-
3.
2 or 3.
2 or 3 on the
3
red.
would be on the high end of that, like, yeah. Okay. And then and one last question, sorry. And so what happened to, I guess, the as appropriate? I know we were throwing around the as appropriate word. And I think that was intended, in my recollection, or what I thought that was going to be was as appropriate based on maybe location or something. So not, say, for instance, in a well-established subdivision of Charlottetown, maybe a new development area or something. So I see the as appropriate has kind of disappeared from even the language here now. But we were always driving to that term somehow, and I don't know. We have Mike here. I know, Mike, we presented that to you several times, that word, and it's been bantered around and documented. I don't know where it's gone
Okay.
now.
Just going to let the deputy
Thank
take
you.
it on first. Deputy?
I think that where you'll see as appropriate would be based on lot size, parking requirement, meeting National Building Code, the size of the ADUs, must be a principal residence. So those are the as appropriates that we would have spoke to. Mike, if there's any more, or Donna, if there's any other as appropriates, but I think those were some of the high-level ones that were noted.
Thank you, Madam Deputy, on that. I think you summarized it well. I would maybe just generally state that when we talk about as of right, as appropriate, the as of right piece is an important part of it. And it means that we've clearly outlined the conditions in which staff would be able to issue a permit. And so the as appropriate piece are the conditions, as the deputy outlined. So the conditions in which, those additional units would be considered appropriate on that site. So we've tried to qualify what appropriate could mean in these contexts through those conditions. So if there are additional conditions that council feels would be valuable to consider, I think this is the forum to discuss those. If you think we've hit kind of the nail on the head on this approach, then that's great. But I think those are kind of the pieces that we're looking for feedback on at this time.
Yeah. And Madam Chair, if I go back to the March 4th meeting that Councillor Matart referred to, Jacob did address the 4 units as of right housing. The approach is intended to increase housing supply while maintaining neighborhood character. Standards would include minimum lot size requirements, parking requirements, maximum bedroom limits, and owner occupancy requirements. Deputy, I just want to go ahead, Deputy.
Yep. And also, also then your next step, of course, is meeting your National Building Code. Whether that means that you have to have, a non-combustible type of siding put on your home if it's here, so there's all those other things that go with it. But I also would note that in our current bylaw right now, although the lot size is larger, we still have, I think it's a 3-unit as of right, currently existing in our existing bylaw, although the lot size is, I believe, half acre. So just as a sidebar.
Do you want to just confirm that, Jacob, Donna, Brad? Councilor Twill?
Is that muted or is that on? No, you're good. Okay. Apologies. Through the mayor, or to the mayor, yes, there is a 0.2 hectares or 0.5 acre minimum size for garden suites. And the secondary suites that are allowed in your current bylaw don't have any lot size requirement whatsoever. But they do have size limits on the floor area of the secondary suite. Really, actually, some of that comes from your building code. The accessory dwelling unit's regulated a little bit differently. So yeah, the garden suite and secondary suite that are defined in your current bylaw are allowed in the residential zones. The sizes are larger lots that allow them, so it ends up fewer lots have the ability to do them, but our impetus is to provide more options in these established residential neighborhoods for all the reasons that people love them. And rather than presenting these as deterrents as to why people won't do it, I may want to also offer the narrative that by having all these regulations around bedroom counts, 7-meter height limit on the accessory, side yards, lot coverage, it means that when it does happen in these established residential neighborhoods, it's not as obnoxious or scary, because we've controlled a lot of those things that can get out of hand, right? And very large bedroom counts being rented out to people, perhaps students or something that don't fit with the character of a neighborhood, and large numbers of students that change the tenor of a neighborhood. No disrespect to students, but at different stages in life, you have different times you're awake at night and in the morning. So, that some of that we're mitigating through these rules. So it's not to say it won't happen. It's to say if and when it does happen, it's going to be in a way that doesn't disturb the peace and quiet of your neighborhood, even if you are allowing more people to have residence in the neighborhoods that you all love within the city of Charlottetown. That's a more optimistic way and a more positive way to frame it, rather than the deterrence language that I may have used before, but both are true. I just wanted to put that alternative out there.
Councilor McAleer and then Councilor Beck.
Yeah, thank you. Again, thanks for the presentation. It's been great from the start, at a very high level. But just, I have had a couple of conversations with Dave Gundrum, who's not here this evening. I don't believe he's online. And just to try to understand the context of potentially what the 4 units as of right would mean if it was adopted by council and the updating the zoning development bylaw. And I know he's not here, but I thought I understood him to say broadly at a high level that if the 4 unit as of right was adopted, and I'm looking at the map here, to Councillor Matart's, point or clarity that there's a lot of yellow on there where, it looks like there could be a lot of 4 units as of right. But back to the conversation I had with David, I was understanding from him broadly, and again, he's not here to maybe I misinterpreted it, but I did clarify it with him. I felt a second time that I understood him to say only about 30% roughly of the residences or properties in the, across the city, if this was adopted, would be affected, would be qualified for 4-unit as of right, and I don't know if that's a misunderstanding or.
There's 2 things happening, again. Oh, thank you so much, sorry. How we tell a story, again, is really important, and I think we just really want to be open and clear about this. There are a number of properties in Charlottetown across the city. Clearly, less than 30% of all properties can certainly do this. But even within the residentially zoned properties, I don't have the number for you, but we can get it for you. What is a little deceptive about this is in the core of the city, the oldest parts of the city, where the lines are really dark because the lots are small, a lot of properties are down there that are actually, even though the land mass, it's like your polling district sometimes. The land mass may be bigger, but the number of people there are the same. These lots are larger, so the yellow shows up on the map and it looks like a lot. But because the smaller lots take up less space, you could have 4 or 5 lots in the 500 lot area on one Lewis Point lot, right? So we can get the number for you on the quantitative number of lots. David may be correct that it's 30%. I expect it's around 30%. I can't say for sure that it's less than 30% until we crunch those numbers. We didn't count them. We thought the visual was more impactful.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you. And could you go back to the pic there where it shows the ADU units?
Yep. Oops.
Yeah, so when we talked to, and again, I was understanding, again, from the conversations I had with David, as we talked about as appropriate, and that was to be defined because appropriate was part of our half application and the back and forth that still goes on with that. But that as appropriate is being defined now in what qualifies. What qualifies, if a property qualifies or not. So it has to be certain lot size, certain specifications. So isn't that an example of as appropriate being, having some language or some?
That, through the chair, this is how we describe it, is really, if we want to use the term as appropriate in a sentence, what we would say here is 4 units is appropriate where the yellow shows up on this map and where in those properties they follow all the building code rules, the setback rules, the height rules. Then you've got an appropriate condition for 4 units as of right. Every other property in the city of Charlottetown is inappropriate or not appropriate for 4 units as of right. So the red and every other residentially zoned and every other non-residentially zoned property is inappropriate, and where it is appropriate is on these larger lots that show up in yellow on this map. That is what I would say for the as appropriate conversation.
Okay, and could you go back just one more if I could to the pic there, the units? Okay, so the STR question. What can be an STR in any of these examples potentially, or can they be?
So the STRs, as I said, in the 3-unit example, if the principal resident is on site, then one of the 3 units can be used as an STR for the period. If the principal resident's on site, they can rent one of those units as an STR while they're on site. The other place where the STR could be applied is on the, I'm just making sure, I don't want to misspeak here, apologies.
Make it factual.
Yep. So the place where the unit is allowed is the unit can be used as a short-term rental as long as the operator host is present in the principal dwelling unit in an attached ADU. When you have 3 units, one of the ADUs can be used. So only one, in both the 2-unit and the 3-unit example, one can be used as an STR if you're on site. In the 4-unit example, we don't have a provision to allow the detached ADU to be used as a short-term rental. So only the attached units can be used as a short-term rental, and only when you are present on site. Can be, I'm sorry, the detached unit can be used as a short-term rental, again, with the principal dwelling on site. It's under 4.74C, my apologies. That was a little too much suspense. Again, the 1 unit can be used as a short-term rental so long as the principal resident is, or the operator host is present on site. So 1 unit in any of the cases can be used as an STR so long as the host is on site.
Yeah. And just staying with the STR question, in these examples, again, I think there's numerous examples of this that live in the city. I have a cottage. I go to the cottage for the summer, June, July, August. I leave my principal residence. Can there be 2 STRs possibly in play and something like that?
No.
No, Don is here. We have a STR license.
Yeah.
So Donna, can you address that?
Thank you.
So we clarify. I'm glad you bring it up, John.
So through to Councillor McAleer, no, only one of the units could be used for an SDR at any point in time.
That's why it's principal residence. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Beck and then Councillor Tartt.
Yeah, just I'll finish off on that. So if you decide to, you could use one, say, take the 4-unit example, you could be renting out your principal residence. That could be the rental. No, or short-term. In the case of the cottage, like if you go to the cottage, you can, and you decide to rent out your house, that's the 1 unit that is counting towards a short-term rental. That doesn't mean that for the other 9 months you rented out the detached ADU. That means you cannot rent it out at the same time as you're renting out your principal residence. Right. Okay. So under any of those examples, under the 2-unit example with the detached ADU, that could be the STR while you were living in the main residence, and that could apply to any of the units for the 3 or the 4. Okay. All right. I just want to go back to the as appropriate for a minute, and there's an important historical context. When we first went down this road, the request was to approve 4 units as of right. Period. No, this is at the start, and this is where as appropriate came in. Because we were in a bit of a unique situation because we did not have an official plan, we did not have a zoning and development bylaw. So the words as appropriate were inserted to allow us time to go ahead with the process, commit to the Housing Accelerator Fund in principle, but at the end of the day, there would be extensive public consultation that would be provided to residents to come in to give their input to any potential changes to the zoning and development bylaw. So we are now at the point where as appropriate is now getting defined. So this was always kind of the intent that we had at the start, was to allow the process to move forward, but also to get us to this point. And this is really the first time where we've ever had the chance to talk about 4 units, because everything up until this point was theoretical in nature, because we were waiting for our official plan to get adopted, and we were waiting for our zoning and development bylaw to get adopted as well, too. So that's kind of an important reminder about how we ended up with this term. And it basically will disappear, and the intent was it would always disappear at some point in time. And now it's about to disappear and be redefined. And I think that's effectively what we're doing right now. I do want to go back to something you said, Jacob, about that there will be no change to characters of neighborhoods. And it kind of tags onto what Councillor Matart was saying too, that there are no guarantees down the road. When these changes are implemented, the potential for change is there. Currently, houses have been bought, they've been purchased under the understanding that you're in an R1, R2, R1L, R1, whatever our 13 previous zones that we had before. So, you know, the reality is, and I think that's the essence of what is the source of consternation for residents, is that, you know, we're trying to preserve character and we're trying to maintain neighborhood character. But the reality is that when we do go down this road, it's different. It changes the street. It changes potentially an area. If they can fit all the setback requirements, the building codes and all that stuff. So I think that's something that we have to be very sensitive to as we're moving forth along this process. I do have a few questions that I was just wondering about. The administrative variances. Can you go back to that for a minute, Jacob? It was talking about, yeah, right there. So, you know, currently now, if we get a major variance or a minor, sometimes minor variances usually get approved at the professional level. Major variances have to come here. So is that basically saying that if there's any kind of that major variances and minor variances will still exist, and they will all be handled at the professional level? Both of them will be handled at the professional level right now?
Through the mayor to the councillor, we're saying major variances won't be allowed. If you were requesting a major variance, you're essentially requesting a rezoning. And that's really the process you should go through. It is not a site-specific variance because you have some limitation. You're asking for something major, a change in density. There's a process for that. It's called a rezoning. And that's the process we're directing people to. Many of the zones that we've put in place allow you to rezone to another zone if you need more density or desire more density. And that's a discretionary process that involves council. But it's not a variance that takes into sight some aspect of the individual. Those minor variances that we're still allowing, that we're defining with a quantitative standard, will be approved by professionals on your staff. They won't come here, and council won't spend time on variances, but you will likely see more rezoning applications. But rezoning applications have a defined process. They come with some planning study, and they're going to come to think not just about the individual site, but what that means for other. When you consider a rezoning, your scope increases a little bit. You think about more than just the subject site. You start to think about its neighbors a little bit more, as well as other areas that have that zone allowance. So that's the process we're pushing towards. That's what we've written in here. We don't think major variances are a great planning tool. In fact, we think they're not good for planning. We want certainty, and rezonings exist. If you need more density, you can go through a rezoning process.
Okay.
Can I just ask, Chair, did you want to add something? Because you,
I know, I appreciate Councillor Beck's question because I had talked in great lengths with Laurel on this subject as well as with Mike to understand it as well. And, you know, one of the things we've seen over the years are these major variances that really have nothing to do with an actual, like, property needing setbacks. Like when we think of variances, it's like you need a little bit more room in your backyard. And all of a sudden, we've taken these variances and turned them into zoning changes. So what we're trying to do is streamline and realize that variances are meant for minor things. And rezoning, site-specific exemptions and are zoning things, which shouldn't be a variance. Which is why, so we're not taking away a major variance, we're just renaming it and redefining it, what it actually is, which is a site-specific exemption. Or a rezoning, I should say, yeah.
Councillor Beck.
Okay, so so if if that's done at the professional level, is there appeal mechanisms with that? Let's say I'm a developer, I don't agree with the decision, where does that go?
I'll let you guys.
Would that be an IRAC decision, or would that come to council as a first step? How would that be handled?
So Laura, we're taking reconsideration out of the bylaw?
Yes, your worship, reconsideration's being removed, and then we're proceeding to the same process that all other municipalities follow, which would be 21-day appeal period through IRAC.
Okay. All right.
That's the new IRAC.
So the reconsideration is gone, or that process?
it's gone.
is
Yep.
Step, okay.
Did you want to keep it?
No, I'm not looking to keep it. I'm just, I didn't think it was a great mechanism in the past, but anyway, that's okay. Neither here nor there. That's good. I wanted to go back. I know that there was a comment made, Jacob, about the request for more density around Holland College and UPEI. And I think when we agreed under the Housing Accelerator Fund, I believe we agreed 4 stories as of right, correct? Did we not? Is that what we agreed to? Donna or anybody, can you answer that? Yeah, that's what I thought. So, and that was within an 800-meter radius, I believe it was, something like that? Yes, right, okay. So what are they looking for? Like, if there's a request where they're kind of saying, well, let's go to 6, let's go to 8, let's go to 10. Was there any kind of feeling you were getting about that? Because anyway, if you could answer that question.
Okay. Through the mayor to the councillor, thank you for the question. It was interesting to us, so we dug into it a little bit to understand why this was coming up, because the growth corridors and the growth nodes both went quite a ways to providing density near UPEI, certainly, and even around Holland College with some of the improvements downtown to allow more along the corridor that goes east. Where this comment was focused was actually on the residential neighborhood on the other side of the Confederation Trail to the east of UPEI. The group that was commenting felt that the rule should be applied to all properties that are within 800 meters of UPEI properties, including these residential neighborhoods, and we disagreed with that. So that was all of the residential neighborhood zones, some of which popped up in yellow and showed as being large lots that could handle 4 units. They were requesting those properties be increased to 4-story multifamily residential, which we did not do. Even though technically those properties are within 800 meters of UPEI property, they were not on streets and areas that could handle residential density in multi-unit buildings. So we focused the residential density that is related to UPEI along University, along that corridor.
And for Holland College, is it along Grafton?
Yeah, on the way out. And also, I'm sorry, I don't know the
Kent?
exact bounds of Holland College offhand.
Yeah, there's Kent Street and.
Kent Street
It's
and
sandwiched
Grafton.
between Kent and Grafton.
Sorry, Jacob, Grafton would take you east
Yeah.
towards the
Yeah.
bridge, yeah.
That's right. I just didn't know the Holland College. But yes, those areas have the downtown mixed-use designation on them that allow that redevelopment. I
Okay.
believe. Yeah.
All right.
Councillor Beck, I'm looking here, density bonus and design standards for affordable units, initiative number 7. Is that where we incorporated the corridors and the nodes as one of our 8 initiatives? Are they?
I'll flip back. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Oh, I went past it. So, Mr. Mayor, item 5, redevelopment for higher density apartments, enable redevelopment of existing sites for multi-unit and mixed-use housing in appropriate growth areas. That sort of direction was read into these growth corridors and growth nodes. That's where that sort of impacted. That's why we went there. I think it also, the density bonusing and clear design standards, when I talked about those step backs and sort of how we've drawn into the bylaw now, the example buildings with quantitative regulations on step backs and setbacks. That's the clear design standards, and density bonusing does exist across those growth corridor and growth node zones and some of the downtown zones where you can do 2 additional stories, if you provide certain benefits to community.
Okay, so just before, Councilor Beck, just 1 second. So if I go to the 28 milestones, remove exclusionary zoning, promote higher density includes 4 units as of right. It says permit increased densification around University Prince Edward Island Holland College campus, the Queen Elizabeth Hospital campus by enabling 4-story buildings with an 800-meter height. So it's under that one, number 8.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead there, Councilor Beck.
Yeah, I just have a couple more points, if
keep
that's
going.
okay. I'd like you to go back, Jacob, to that 40% coverage slide. So, it had 40% and 90%. I think it was RN and DN, maybe. Yeah, there you go. I'm not quite sure what that means.
Yeah.
The lot coverage requirements, RN zone is 40 plus 10 equals 50. And then DN zone, 80 plus 10 equals 90. I'm not quite sure what that's all about. Can you
Through
clarify
the mayor
that
to
for me?
Councilor Beck, I'll explain this, and I'm happy to re-explain it if I don't get it right the first time. The RN zone currently has a lot coverage maximum of 40%. So if you own a home in the RN zone, you're allowed to build your home up to 40% of your lot. That can be the footprint of your home. What we've said is when you do the lot coverage, it actually adds up all the buildings on your property. So your detached accessory dwelling unit could potentially push you over the 40%. So to avoid discouraging it, we said if you're putting on an accessory dwelling unit in a detached building, we'll give you 10% more lot coverage, and that'll allow this to happen in more areas. So this is a lenient addition that allows more properties to have this. Now, in reality, in the RN zone, where the lots are larger than in the DN zone, you don't have many buildings at 40% lot coverage. Because if you're a quarter-acre lot, 40% would be an eighth of an acre almost, or a little less than an eighth of an acre for the footprint of your house, which is not, you don't have many ranchers that big. So there are, it's made to make it more lenient, to allow more people in. Similarly, in the DN zone, Councilor Beck, the lot coverage maximum is 80%. You're allowed to cover 80% of a DN, of a downtown neighborhood lot, because the lots are so small. The houses generally cover more of the lot. They're built to lot lines because they predate planning regulations and zoning. So in that case, we'll say if you're building an accessory dwelling unit in the DN zone, you can go all the way up to 90% of your lot being covered by building, which is almost, I mean, it's 90%, it's almost all the lot. So that's what that means. So
Okay.
when Ruby did the analysis on these maps, she did take the footprints of existing buildings and then took the max size of an accessory dwelling unit and a detached accessory dwelling unit, added them together, and then ran the math and excluded properties that would be over 50% coverage if they had the ADU.
Okay.
So it was a way for us to eliminate more of the properties and make them not yellow and make them red.
Okay, so those units that are in yellow, they fall into the 40 plus 10 allotment then? Okay. And I'm going to go back to our war lots for a minute, which are an acre. What could be built on them? If we're saying a quarter acre builds 4 units, can they build a building there, or can they expand up to half an acre on that lot?
How many war lots? Do we know how many wartime lots are still left?
I don't know. Not sure.
Through the mayor to the councilor, it's a good exercise to go through. If you own an acre of property in the city of Charlottetown, in this regulation, if you were zoned RN, it is highly likely you'd be able to fit 4 units. Your existing home would have 2 attached ADUs, and somewhere else on that 1 acre, you would build a 80 square meter footprint building that's no more than 7 meters high, and you can make it another unit. That is highly likely, but there's no just because you're so big doesn't mean you get another one and another one and another one. It's 4 units per lot.
Right.
Yeah, 4.
But in those particular ones, it would be.
It's
there'd be-
highly
there-
likely a 1 acre lot would be able to fit the 4 units.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because to get to 50% lot cover, you're never going to cover half an acre with buildings unless it's not for a residential building. Could be a farm or a garage.
See, I don't know if we can say never. That's the
It's
thing. I mean,
20,000 square
theoretically, we can't, right? So,
Sure, there can theoretically be a 20,000 square foot single-family home
if someone chose to do that.
if someone chose
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
that. This is theoretically correct.
Yeah, an acre is 42,000 square feet.
An acre is 44
43,
something.
44, yeah.
There you
Okay,
go.
Yeah.
good.
No, just one other thing. On the next step slide there,
Yeah.
I be near the end.
Yeah.
So September, it says public meeting of council. When I read that, I just think that that's a meeting that's like tonight, viewable on YouTube. But my understanding is we were having a meeting where people could come in and speak to council, correct?
That's right, public consultation.
So that might want to be clarified, because I think when I read that, I just thought, that's just the wording of that kind of sounds like it's a public meeting of council, much like we're having here tonight, as opposed to providing an opportunity for the public to come in and speak to council. And I think that's a totally different meaning. That's totally different meaning than what we're having here tonight. Because depending on how you interpret that, we could interpret that in 2 different ways. That was my understanding, is what we were doing, that members of the public will be able to come in here and speak to us. Those who did not attend pop-up sessions, those who did not, or even those who did, if they still want to come and they want to speak to the final, because at this point in time, we're looking at our final draft, right? This is the one that we're saying, we're coming with you. We've done the edits, we've done the circling back, we've done the listened, and now here's what we have. And I think that's important for the public to have that opportunity. And I think we even talked about having that in an off-site situation, did we not?
Charlottetown Hotel,
Charlottetown
not
Hotel.
Charlottetown. Lights, action.
Yeah, so, and that would that be televised too?
Yep, we'd have to bring out in all the, we did during COVID, remember how we
Sure.
brought in all the,
It's the same
Go.
as all planning processes.
Yeah.
It's a public hearing. We just happen to have smaller files. Oftentimes we meet in here, but any large files, and historically, they were always at the Charlottetown Hotel.
Always.
But we just found with the smaller files, we could handle enough of the people here. So a public meeting of council is the actual legislative term for it, for when we go out to do that, the time for public to actually come up to the mic and identify where they're from and talk about pros and cons and what suggestions from what that draft looks like. And there could be changes even after that public meeting.
There could be.
Because the public could identify things that
We
we've
didn't.
missed again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there'll be lots of
And
eyes
an
and ears on it.
example would be, to segue into that, one of the items that we probably could nip in the bud tonight, and that is the area between Pownell and Haviland Street. There's 6 buildings there that are all heritage buildings. So there's no point in allowing that area to be 8 stories as of right, because they're already zoned heritage. So you're contradicting your heritage preservation bylaw and in essence, your heritage conservation bylaw. So those should really remain as the five stories as of right, the way they are. And even everyone that owns those have already sent a letter stating the same thing, so you're not going to get any pushback. But I think that's probably something, if council agrees to that this evening, we should just, get that changed. It's a quick little change before it heads off to the planning board for the
And
recommendation for a
Jacob,
plan.
we are, as the chair knows, and has been attending some of the meetings on the heritage preservation bylaw amendments and overhaul. Is it Intra? Is that who's doing the work? Intra or Instra? Intra. They're doing the work on that, and they've already identified that particular area as, it's an anomaly, yeah. Anyway, something to consider, that's a good point. Okay, Councilor Matart, I know you've been waiting patiently.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do you want a
No,
drink of
no,
water?
That's fine. We're here for the questions. I'm going to draw us back to the 4 units of right again, if you wouldn't mind, Jacob, going to the slide where I think you were showing some, yeah, here. So not this particular one. Can you go to one where if this represents where I could put 4 units as of right on a property, could you show me what slide that is? Is it 37?
Oh,
One of these ones?
these three examples, sorry, through the mayor to the committee, these 3 examples are ADUs on sites to show the detached ADU. In all,
Okay, let me just use this
I'll
as an
say in
example.
this site,
Okay.
4 units would not be possible. It's not large enough.
Okay.
Right?
Just for the purpose of effect.
This
let's
site
just-
likely could hold them if that home could fit 2 attached ADUs somewhere inside its envelope.
Okay, so I'm just gonna speak to this from
Yeah.
layman's terms and being a resident. So let's say the right-hand image here, with the white car in the driveway is my property. I've got that big lot. And so am I correct in saying that the lot size is the basic main requirement for 4 units as of right, period, right? That, I have to meet that at the very basic level. So I look at that and say, great, I meet that. Now, I want to explore this further. But all you heard here today is all these other conditions or as of appropriate things. So those other things, so I heard parking, okay, so it's the first says I'm owner occupied. I said, okay, great, I'm gonna live in one of them, so check that box off. Parking says I have to have 4 parking spots. I assume because the lot size met the basic requirement, it also means I can put 4 parking spots there, right? So check, that's checked. And then the setback's gotta be this, that, and the other, check. I'm just gonna build it based on everything that's there. Because the requirement of the very basic requirement of the lot size said that I have to meet that, and if I do meet that, if I just follow all the rules, everything else falls in place, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's the point I'm trying to make is that, like, you think that people will have that? Of course, people are gonna want bigger and more and less, and you would just say, no, you don't check those boxes off. You didn't check those boxes off, so you can't do it, correct? But if everybody just said, great, I can do this, I'm gonna live there, I'm gonna put 4 units, I'm gonna have all the setbacks, the buildings are all gonna be the size they have to be, parking's gonna be what it is, then that is the case where I say it can be done, correct? And there would be no likelihood that, unless you wanna change it, unless you wanna change what is there.
Through the mayor to the councilor, that is correct. There is no, when we adopt and you make these standards, the regulations for the sites, the same way it is today. This property, that property on the right that you're talking about, the white car, that probably currently qualifies for a garden suite in your city bylaws today. Or a secondary suite, because it's quite a large lot. So just like that today, you have no, once you adopt a regulation that says this is allowed, if the lot size is met and the drawings meet the building code and that meet all our regulations, yes, we stamp it, we issue the building permit, we provide occupancy. They would have to meet all your regulations for managing through the construction and ensuring it meets the National Building Code or the PEI Building Code. But there is no way from a planning perspective to stop it, because we've said in this regulation, these are the type of properties that are appropriate for the 2 attached ADUs and the detached ADU on the property in the rear lot.
So that's, I guess, the
That's
point
the
I'm
point.
making is that if this is me, again, just using that's my house, I'm gonna do that. I'm just gonna follow all the rules, and I'm gonna change the characteristic of that street to some degree by adding in 4 units, and then jump over to my second neighbor over there in the middle. He's got a big lot, and he's gonna do the same thing, because he saw what I did, and he's gonna say, well, that's wonderful, I'm doing, my lot's the same size. What did you have to do? It's follow all the rules. So he's gonna follow all the rules, and he's gonna do the same thing, and so on and so on and so on. So I guess when I think about the likelihood or things, I guess, it's very specific requirements here. But nonetheless, all you have to do is follow, just like now. That's why we have ADUs in backyards already, because people said, I'm just gonna follow the rules and I'm gonna get one.
That's right.
So, okay, well, I guess that, I'm sorry, I just keep trying to, like, dumb this down to, being just trying to understand if I was a resident's perspective and that's my property, or further, I'm the one in the middle with the little pink ADU box, and knowing what this guy to the right of me can do, and the guy to the left of me can do, that's more important too. So if I'm going door to door and people are asking me, what can my neighbor do on that as 4 units of right? All I have to say is if it meets the lot size and they play by all the rules and check all the boxes off, 4 units as of right will be on that property. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep. So law, and through the mayor to the councillor, I think the number of requirements there you want to be clear on is that they have to live on the property as well. So
Yeah,
so
no,
long as-
like,
I'll
I'm
just-
saying I mean, the probability of all that happening, but nonetheless, they might say, yes, they're gonna live there, they're gonna have the setbacks, they're the building codes, they're gonna have the parking, they're gonna, again, it's, I know it's probability that might not happen, but nonetheless, if they just check off all the boxes.
Through the mayor to the councillor, I think it's very important to surface that and be clear about it. I think it's a great conversation to have, and I
Yeah.
appreciate you bringing it
I'm
up.
trying to have it because I'm being asked about it.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to bring it down to that level.
Yeah.
And, well, that's where I need to understand it too, is to bring it down to that level. I feel I'm in an area where a lot of the yellow is showing up. There are, contrary to what people may believe, because they haven't come to a public meeting, there is quite a few people who do, well, they know what they don't know what the 4 units of right is, but they know the terms out there and they know it's something, meaning you put 4 units on a property. I'm trying to do my best to break it down so they understand it, because they're not coming here. So anyways, thank you for that.
Did you want to add something there? I know that you're,
Yes, and just to
Always
build on
going
what
back.
Council Matard said, the other thing pointing out and letting residents understand is putting in perspective what they could currently do today with the current bylaw, and that might be that they might not be able to fit 4 units, but they could fit 3, but they don't have to live there. So, comparing what you can do now versus what you can do if this draft is adopted, isn't quite as overwhelming if you compare the two. So there's good with some, there's good in both ends of it, but I think the one thing with the current draft is the owner needing to live on the property, and not only that, if the owner chooses to STR any of his units, whether he's able to get 2 or 3 or 4, he can't go to his cottage overnight and leave it unattended. He must be on the premises in order to do that. So that currently isn't what's happening right now. Sure. Oh, yeah.
Just for clarity, I know we keep talking about owner occupied. And so going back to my example, that's my house. I own that house. It's my primary residence. My mail goes there. And I just so happen to have a cottage that I go to in the summer. That doesn't change the fact that that's not my primary residence. I go to my cottage. Because I feel like we're talking about when going to cottages and stuff is that you're no longer living there. You're certainly living there. You come in every day to go to work and you might stop at, I want to be very clear on the difference between going to a cottage and not calling that I don't know who I'm asking that to. I guess I'm just throwing it out there.
do you want to clarify?
I was just referencing that not only does it need to be your principal residence, but if you did choose as the principal owner of the property, if you decided you wanted to get into the STR business, you can't go to
No,
your
I get
cottage
that,
when you're
yes.
doing that. That's all I meant.
I get that
But
from
no, your
STR.
cottage is not your principal residence, so
But I get
I
that
was
from
just showing that as another important factor to share with residents when you are going door to door or discussing with them, because as counselors, our residents are not, most of them aren't coming out to these meetings, so it is important for us to be able to really be able to explain it to them, yeah.
And again, Jacob, I'll always keep going back to March 4th, minimum lot size requirements, parking requirements, maximum bedroom limits, and that owner occupancy and National Building Code. So could I just ask a quick question? In Calgary, they had a blanket policy on 4 units as of right. Is that what we got here? Is this a blanket policy? I just want to get that clarified, because I've heard that. Jacob?
To you, Mr. Mayor, this is not a blanket policy because you have parsed the residential zones differently. You have RN, RM, RH, DN. You have these different, you still have different flavors of residential zones. And there are some of these zones where we're not allowing the 4 units and we're being quite restrictive on the size of the lot. So it's not it's difficult. I mean, again, blanket zoning is not a term that is defined by any regulation, but it is this sort of when you've applied it everywhere ad hoc. And I think this process, because you're part of a greater investigation of your entire zoning regulation with the OP update in line with it, it is different. The language that's used in Calgary right now around blanket rezoning is when to satisfy some conditions in some cities, they went in and made a precision change. And this happened in some Atlantic cities where they just went in and only changed the residential allotments on established residential neighborhoods. And they went from single family to 4 units as of right across all residential zones. And they didn't have this context of all this other direction from their official plan. They sort of went in and did a blanket. I think that would be fair to say. But blanket rezoning is not a term that's defined. So again, someone could characterize this as a blanket rezoning.
Yeah.
I would defend against that by saying because you are stemming all of this work from your official plan update, you've looked at every zone, commercial, institutional, heritage downtown zones, you've looked at everything. This is not a targeted blanket rezoning to increase the density in established residential areas. That is one thing that you're doing in updating your entire zoning and development bylaw.
Councilor McAleer, Councilor Ramsey, Councilor Bedard.
Yeah, thank you. Just want to support what the Deputy Mayor said there in relation to the Water Street properties. The heritage piece from Pownell to Rochford certainly support that retaining its 5-story character, its heritage history and how it sits. But and to Councillor Matart's, with all the gold that we saw on the maps, I just think it's the cost that I think somebody that would have to go through if they went down the road of doing that, and what it would mean. Like I said, just the economic cost, the tax situation you'd be in. I don't know how quick people will be to to act on this if if it was adopted. I know I had a conversation with a resident that went through fairly recently, just renovating. I think it was maybe a 400 or 500 square foot garage area, and it was an awful lot of money. It was scary what it cost, to get it up to code and get to do everything that had to be done. And that was with them doing a lot of the work themselves. So anyway, that's just a view of mine. I don't know where we'll land with this in the end, but and if I could go back just to clarify what we talked about. I understood it earlier. Major variances will be replaced with rezonings, kind of, and
Through the mayor to the council, that's correct.
yeah, but site-specific exemption applications and will still live.
So through the mayor to the councilor, that is not in the zoning the zoning and development bylaw, we don't use the term site-specific zoning exemptions. You are not exempted from the regulations. We have site-specific zoning amendments where you are applying for a rezoning. We have site-specific variances for minor variances, but we do not say that there's a path to exceptions. The path to exception, or if you need something that you aren't allowed to do on your property, you have to apply for a different zoning regulation, is the way we're headed on this regulation. So there is no site-specific exemption. That is a discretionary process outside of what the staff are able to exempt through the variance process with the professional opinion of the development officer, and that even is limited by quantifying it as 10% of the quantitative standard. So if it's a 6-meter side yard and you can't meet it because something about your property exempts you or stops you from meeting it, you can vary that between 5.4 meters and 6.6 meters, and that'll be at the discretion of the development officer. Once you need more variance than that, you're really trying to build something that isn't intended, and you're going to have to go through a different process. That's going to be a discretionary process of this council, but it's not called an exemption. It's called a rezoning. You're changing to a different zone. Yeah.
Some history to this. Yes, your worship. Just some history on the site-specific exemption portion that's currently in the bylaw. When we brought that in a number of years ago, that was strictly intended to amend uses on properties. So, for instance, if you were in a commercial area, and I'm just going to use this as an example, and an institutional use wasn't permitted, but the site itself could allow for an institutional use, there wouldn't be a lot of land use conflicts. We brought that section in to allow a property owner to amend the use, and then we would specifically list that in the back of the bylaw as an appendix. What's happened, it's morphed over the years into developers coming in and asking for additional density, additional variances up and above what normally would be permitted in the bylaw. So to an extent, it's almost been abused. So I believe this is why we're trying to limit it now. When we do assess them, we look at the whole scope. We look at how they, like these site-specific amendments, larger variances, fit into the neighborhoods. And we're still approaching them from good planning principles, but in all honesty, they are excessive to what normally you would allow, and it's not actually what the bylaw intended originally, if that helps.
Good. Okay, Councillor Ramsey from Ward 5, is it?
Thank you, Jacob, and everybody for your presentation. It was very interesting. We talked about and we read about and we heard about all of the corridors that are heading in and out of the city. And for me, I need almost a virtual picture of everything, like North River Road, University Avenue and everything. Like, there's not a whole lot of room there to put things there because of businesses, homes, like University Avenue, for example. When you go in, and the closer you get in here, like the houses are almost on the sidewalk. And North River Road's similar to that. The right out there's a sidewalk and that's it. And I keep hearing about the corridors and the density, and this is where we want to do it because of transit and everything along that line. I just wondering, I don't know where you're going to find the room to do it, I guess is what or the average citizen is going to find room to do it, I should say. Thank you. So that's just a comment. Is it too much?
Want me to go ahead, or is anybody responding? Was there a response?
Well, through the mayor to the council, I appreciate the comment, and you're correct, there are a lot of smaller lots along there, and those aren't lots that would qualify for this sort of 4 to 6 units. Again, we write rules to make sure it's happening on appropriate properties. There is a large section of University sort of once you're at Kirkwood and North, you have mostly commercial properties. Those properties are quite large. Many of them back onto residential properties, but they're quite deep. So the building would be focused on the front, like right at University Ave. You would be building the building on the street at the sidewalk. Parking would be underneath or behind, and the building would not encroach then on the residential neighbors that have their backyards backing on those properties. So that's how we've written it. Some of those properties, certainly in that area, are large enough. There are properties that aren't. and they wouldn't be able to fit a building, and they wouldn't redevelop. So it is, again, just like the 4 units as of right, as appropriate, these are 4 to 8 unit, or 8-story buildings, but on some lots, they're not appropriate for that, so they won't fit, so they won't be built. They'll stay as they are.
Thank you.
Councilman Turk,
I did have
Ward two.
another question, but I just want to go back to Councillor McAleer on your comment, because it made me think of something. You indicated, whether or not you thought people might be quick to act on this based on a number of factors, like you said, property, taxes, and, just all kinds of factors that you thought. Well, that's interesting, because then if that is the case, then, why are we bothering to entertain 4 units as right if we feel that people won't act on it? But I guess I would say the government certainly thinks people will, because that's why they're pressuring us to add that to our zoning and development bylaw, because they clearly think that that model will encourage density in neighborhoods, because that's why we're here doing this. So, I think, I see your point of it, but at the same time, we have a government who says, no, this is a model we want to see. This is going to increase density in our municipalities. And therefore, they're pushing that, and they're holding us to that for various other ways. So, so again, I go back to saying there's a lot of people up in Ottawa who think that this is going to work, and people are going to do it. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that, because that's not what my original comment was, but thank you for raising that, because I think it was an important point to point that out. My question then becomes, so is it possible to define certain zoning areas that have 4 units as of right? So in other words, new development areas. We have lots of new development areas popping up in Charlottetown, some that are already in flight, some that are yet to come. And as opposed to, or maybe pulling out established neighborhoods. And I know, that could be a slippery slope determining what's established and what's new and versus what is old. But is that something that could be considered as a council? So I'm just putting that out there. Sounds like the deputy might have a response, or, yeah. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I do.
I mean, that's what I recommend.
The struggle with that option is a lot of the newer subdivisions are going with substantially smaller lot sizes. So you would be eliminating the ability for probably that 4 unit as of right, because those lots are, they're narrow, they're smaller. I mean, am I correct, Mike, in saying that some of these newer subdivisions are a lot smaller in lot size?
Michael?
That's correct, Deputy.
But even technically, let's say, hypothetically say we could, are we bound by it having to be across all the appropriate zones, in this case, R, whatever, like R1, R2, or can we satisfy the requirement as 4 units as of right in new development areas, regardless of, some lots may be able to do it, some may not be, maybe very, very small, but nonetheless, we've accomplished the requirement of 4 units as of right, just in a particular zoned area, not across the city, like we see the yellow heat map that we saw there earlier. It might narrow it down to, parts of East Royalty, West Royalty. When I think of the 80 acres out in Hillsborough Park there, that far corner, it's not been developed yet. 4 units as of right might be more appropriate in that particular area, because it's brand new and hasn't been developed yet.
So Jacob,
So
just
I wonder
quick,
if that can satisfy our requirement.
just to add while it's still got a hot mic, Jacob, in Toronto, the Toronto City Council said 9 wards will be exempted from the 25, and I believe half said, no, your funding's cut. Can you verify that? Because that's what we're looking
Well,
at.
that's basically what I'm
Yeah.
essentially saying.
Oh. Who? No, I know, but I just want to verify, 9 wards, they did talk about 9 wards to be exempted from the half, or from the 4 units as of right.
To the mayor, just, I'm not an expert in what Toronto did, and I don't want to be quoted on it. I think we could ask for staff to follow up with some clarity on
Please.
what happened in Toronto. Specifically, there will be record of that on the City of Toronto's website and the response to that. So I just don't want to go on my recollection of the media in this moment.
What about his response? What about his?
So maybe I'll ask the question. I'm not asking the question to Jacob. So Jacob, just to be clear, I'm not asking you to, I'm asking this generally out loud here to council and to staff, that it is something that as a council, we may want to consider. We don't know. We could look at case studies of Toronto and other places that may have suggested something similar. And CMHC said no, or Half Fund said no. We don't know until we ask as well, right? No, but we haven't asked ourselves. We haven't went back to CMHC and said, you know, our council's kind of leaning towards maybe specific areas that would be exempt of this. And they could outright say, don't bother, it's not, you know, going to make any difference. So we haven't even talked about that, putting that as a possibility into our zoning and development bylaw. It could get rejected, but we haven't, as far as I know. So I'm officially asking for it here now then, like as a consideration.
Yeah, so
So
that's
just
why
to be clear-
that's why I referenced Toronto. I know there were 9 wards that were to be exempted from the 4 units as of right. Michael, we'll look into that, but what's a response, or Jacob, Donna, Laurel?
So Initiative 8 under the city's Housing Accelerator Fund was to remove exclusionary zoning. So by only adopting 4 units as of right in certain areas wouldn't, you know, meet the test of that under our current understanding. But if it's council's will to request, I guess, flexibility or a change from that, we can certainly explore that further with our federal partners.
I don't see it. I mean, again, this is me speaking.
Yeah.
Can't speak for everybody else, but I'd certainly be interested in having that discussion or a dialogue between CMHC on what that may look like. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beck?
Yeah, thank you for that. The good part about this discussion is that the more we talk about it, the more questions do get prompted. So I did ask this question at the March 4th meeting, and I'd just like to revisit it for a minute. So basically, you could go in, you can buy a property if you were so inclined, demolish it and rebuild correctly. You could go in and take, if you had the property was deemed, you said you didn't like the house, said I'm just going to get rid of it, I'm going to demolish it. Can you put up what would look like a small 4-unit apartment building? I'm just for the
Through
public
the matter of the
record and
council, no.
clarification.
These regulations are written such that anything that would look like a 4-unit apartment building would not meet these regulations. There's only 3 units allowed in the one structure. The 4th unit only comes in a detached ADU that has to be separate. You could go to great pains to make it look similar, but you also can't put it in the front yard. You can't put it in the flankage yard if you're on a corner lot, so it's going to be in the rear or the side yard of the building. But yeah, and of course, you're allowed to demolish a property that you own and rebuild. I'll remind it, though, that these limits would limit the accessory dwelling units that are inside the new structure to be limited to 2 bedrooms as well. So it wouldn't be, again, there's going to be a scale. The primary residence is likely to have more than 2 bedrooms, and then these units would be smaller, and there's nothing stopping them from being side by each, though, or side by side.
Okay, so in that instance, if you were to take it and to rebuild it, it would have to have the appearance of a house with the EDUs integrated within, either detached or side by each, rear flankage, side flankage, or totally detached in the backyard. But the semblance would still have to be the appearance of a home.
Through the mayor to the councillor, yes, but I think it's important to clarify. Our architects you've seen new builds in Charlottetown, I'm sure, that don't look like traditional homes. As architecture changes over time and design preference changes, we do see new builds that are slightly more modern.
Yeah.
I know of a few around town so I don't want to look like a home is not something we regulate. There's nothing in the regulations to stop design preference of individuals.
Yeah.
But these size requirements, again, are going to be what determines how the proportionality of the accessory dwelling units are in relation to the primary residence, and then also that it can't be 4 because the 4th has to be a detached, I think is an important consideration in this idea. And I have heard this narrative that people will build 4-unit apartment buildings all over the place, and I think that would be very difficult to achieve with these rules. In fact, they'd be impossible to build a 4-unit building. You could build something that is a 3-unit building with an accessory dwelling unit detached in the backyard.
Yeah.
That is true.
Because that terminology, and I just want to put it out there because that is terminology that people are worried about. They're saying, okay, I have no control over someone coming beside me, taking the property, putting up a 4-unit building. So I'm only repeating what I've heard from people, so I think it's important for clarification purposes on that. The other question I have is around vacant properties. I did a buzz around my neighborhood recently, and there's some areas that have, I can think of 2 areas in particular, but vacant lots. There's nothing on them. They've been there for a long time. And one I could think of might be, I think probably 2 of them that might be acres in size, probably more than an acre in size, or at least close to an acre in size. Let's say someone looks at that and says, where does that fall? Like these would be within our neighborhood, so could those lots be transformed into bigger developments because they fit on the size? Could they go request a rezoning change to allow for larger units to be built in what have been predominantly residential areas? So how do we address the vacant lot in terms of what happens with vacant lots? I'm sure if you drove around all our lots right around the city, there would be vacant lots that are sitting there, and then they say, okay, well, I think I can do this or I can do that. How do we address that, or what can happen on those vacant lots? And I'm thinking of these 2 in particular that are quite substantial, and they're not just single-family lots. There would be multiple, if you were to build on them under today's rules, you could build probably 4 homes on them, I'm thinking. Mm-hmm. So, just wondering what would
Through the
happen
mayor
with
to
them.
the
Go ahead, Jake.
councillor, with respect to how regulations apply on vacant lots versus built lots, the rules are the same. They are the same for a vacant lot and a single-family home on a lot. If your lot is 2 acres and is currently vacant, and you have a lot of road frontage, and you meet the minimum standards, it is likely that someone would explore subdividing that lot to build multiple homes on it. All of the controls around subdivision are based on really 2 factors in a residential neighborhood: your lot frontage on a public road and your total lot area. So in your current regulations, you have a 40-foot or 36.1 foot per unit frontage. So even if you're 37 feet wide and 800 feet back, because you only have the 37 feet of frontage on a public street, you're not able to subdivide that into multiple lots. So you really would stick with that. This is Laurel's area of expertise, if you want to cut in at any point. But that's how regulations would impact vacant lots. The difference between a vacant lot and a lot with a house on it is that there's no demolition cost to you to do the subdivision. So in many ways, you want your vacant lots built on existing city streets. That lot has a pipe in the ground. That lot is serviced by electricity, sidewalks, road. You plow a road in front of a vacant lot every time it snows, and no one benefits from that. So vacant lots you should want to, but there's nothing in a regulation that encourages that. These are just the rules. So if you have these large lots, it's not being developed. The city doesn't have a proactive plan to go in and talk to those owners. You're really just working with the regulations you have. And we did keep these lot standards roughly the same in the new bylaw to avoid any over-incentivization of home destruction. So there was worry at one point in one of our drafts that we'd gone too narrow and that a lot of R1 lots were going to be able to be subdivided, which would incentivize someone to tear down a single-family home, which frankly would have as much, if not more, impact on the character of a neighborhood than the 3 to 4 units as of right. So we did edit that out and went back more towards today's standard in the city of Charlottetown, which is 36-foot lots for frontage. And then the lot area, Laurel, currently is about a tenth of an acre? Or less than that. It's a 16th of an acre, I think.
For a single detached, it's, what is it, 7,000, or no, we lowered it.
No, it's 3,700 square feet, more or less, I think.
For the R1L or the R1L?
That's R2.
Yeah, for the R1N, I believe it's 30. Give me 2 seconds. So lot area for R1N currently is 3,493 square feet for an interior lot. It's a larger for a corner lot. And then currently our R1L, R1S lots are 5,812.5 square feet for an interior and 7,384 for a corner lot.
These are all single-family home type
Those are all
lots.
single families. And single families.
Councillor Beck?
Okay, so just sticking with my vacant lot, large substantial vacant lot again. The option would be to build within the 40 plus 10, say they kept the lot as one lot, one unit. That's the only property. They could build the house with the 40% coverage plus 10% flex bonus, if you will. Same rules apply, up to 3 units, 3 additional units in addition to the principal residence. Then if they decided to apply for a rezoning, which would happen, then each of those individual lots would fall under the same conditions. Principal residence, up to 3 units, as long as it fits all the setbacks and size, things like that.
Well, I think what I understand, sorry, through the mayor to the councillor, is that if you're saying if there is a vacant lot that can subdivide into multiple RN lots,
Yeah.
each of those lots would have the right to build
Right.
a single-family home with the additional units. That's correct. And because of the standards we've chosen, we believe that that won't overwhelm or become too dense as a residential component of an RN neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McAleer?
Yeah, thank you. I struggle with the 4-unit as of right, and I don't think I'm alone in it perhaps, but, I wonder, like, with the recent wave of immigration we've had, and I guess it's obviously been curtailed a bit and vacancy rates gone up, but we all live with still and, got homes in our neighborhoods where there's 8, 9 cars parked, basically rooms been rented out in residences that, that are going on across the city, and it's, still an issue. I wonder if this 4-unit had have lived before that wave came on and what we went through, would it have been a factor in mitigating some of what we're living now? Because there's an awful lot going on with residential properties that's not allowed, shouldn't be going on, but it can't be policed. I just think, we're going to be challenged in our decision-making around this, for what is the best solution as it relates to this question. And anyway, it's just a comment, something to think about. I don't think that the immigration thing's not going to go away. I mean, world's going to go on and going to live, and it's going to happen. It's going to happen again. We've got a great country. We've got a great province. So I think there'll be another boom, another immigration thing. We're a great place to live. So, and we're going to be challenged on what we do with our zoning. So that's just.
Councillor McIntyre, thank you very much. Councillor Twill, any points of listing? You got your own mic there.
Yeah, no, just kind of taking it all in. You know, I go back to what I asked earlier tonight about the accelerator fund, and, you know, we now know, of course, that zoning and development bylaws one aspect of, you know, that particular fund. You know, the discussion around the table today centers around the, you know, the 4 units or the 4 stories, how that's going to apply. I was interested to hear the consultant talk about people pushing for, like you said, 4 stories in existing neighborhoods. My question to you is, people that were promoting that, do they live in these respective neighborhoods? Or are they, you know, could be 2 or 3 miles away? Do they have a vested interest in those neighborhoods? Or they're coming at it from a, I don't know, philosophical or an idealistic, or, you know, it's truly amazing that people will come out and say, this is what should happen in this neighborhood, yet they don't live there. They don't have a stake in the community. And then you get the pushback from the people that live in the community for the last 40, 50 years, and they will tell you that we pay for our zoning. We knew what the rules of the game were when we invested. We took out mortgage payments, we made the sacrifices to live in our community, to ensure predictability, to ensure consistency, so that maybe someday we'll leave it to our children or grandchildren. But it never ceases to amaze me how people from the outside will say, this is what should happen in this neighborhood. I recall, would have been a year and a half ago, I brought in a notice of motion saying that when it comes to affected neighborhoods, people that live within 100 meters or the area of influence should make the determination as to what takes place in their neighborhood, not someone that lives 3 miles or 5 miles or outside of the city. Like, I never did understand why they would have a say as to what takes place in a neighborhood or community. And you know, Councillor Beck talked about the character of these neighborhoods and communities. We've attended meetings here a couple of years ago, I think it was down in your ward. You know, people showed up, said, we don't want this. So there's a fear there. There's a real fear. There was a lady I know, Mrs. Walsh, Ian Walsh's wife. You know, she said, are we going to get the same protection as they're going to have down in the 500 lots? I remember her asking that question. So I appreciate all the work that you've done. I mean, being a professional planner or a consultant, I mean, you're trying to come in, you're trying to balance, you know, what fits, what doesn't fit. You know, same thing with stakeholders. It's great for stakeholders. I mean, stakeholders had a private session. I'm not sure I'm okay with that. I think if stakeholders are going to make a presentation to the consultants, it should be open and transparent. We keep hearing that around the chamber, being open and transparent, but, and again, it's not a criticism, it's an observation. Seems to be 2 sets of rules. Residents got to come out and defend their neighborhood, their investment, for a 40, 50-year period, but we have stakeholders that have private meetings, and they're lobbying, they're lobbyists, and different special interest groups, and will say, this is what we want to see, but yet they don't have an investment in the neighborhoods and communities, and that really troubles me. And I just don't see how that is good decision-making. I'm not criticizing. Please don't take it the wrong way. I appreciate all the work that you've done. I do have one query, and that is you know, we keep hearing about, in around the university or Holland College. I hope that, the experimental farm property is not included. You know, it's zoned institutional. Maybe someday we'll have, a remarkable plan, a green plan that people in Charlottetown can be proud of. And I want to make sure that's protected at all costs. I'll fight that one tooth and nail. There's a lot of other things, you know, I'll kind of look at, but that's one that's near and dear to my heart. And to people in this city, the experimental farm is sacred. And I want to make sure it's protected, preserved, enhanced, locked in, locked out, whatever you want to call it. I appreciate all the work that you folks have done, and keep up the good work.
Yeah, and Jacob, if I could say one thing about the experimental farm, I think we're going through a situation where the Charlottetown Farmers Market was devastated by a fire on Christmas Day. That farmers market had to move to another location. They've tried several times to get back on the site and renovate the building. But the federal government, through the Department of Agriculture, has made it very clear that there has to be a duty to consult. And that duty to consult process is not about just the 4 acres where the Charlottetown Farmers Market sits or did sit or did reside. It's the whole acreage. So that's a whole other issue. And that experimental farm is not our land. It's owned by the federal government, and it's Crown land. And then the duty to consult is very important. It's crucial that they exercise the duty to consult, because that is part of their national reconciliation roadmap going forward. Did you want to follow up with Councillor Twill?
Yeah, I want to come back to
Yeah,
that.
just 1 second. Let him, you already.
Through Mayor to the councillor, I think the idea of the stakeholders and the commenters who came, and I think the idea that the commenters, we don't know where that comment came from, and I think it's a valid concern, and I think we wanted to mention it because we think it's important to note that we heard some things that really don't match what staff could support and what we thought council would support and what's good for the community. So that's an example where we heard something, we didn't agree with it, we didn't put it in, and we think that's in what that residential neighborhood would appreciate. I don't know where the commenters were from, but I know that the comment didn't match what would be reasonable for that community. So you don't see it in the draft.
Okay.
On the stakeholder meetings, we did hold stakeholder meetings, and the best transparency we provide on that is the record of what we learned during those meetings, and that's sort of through the committee presentation we made a few weeks ago on what we heard. So we did record that. They were held in this building or on the phone when we had landowners or interest groups who wanted to talk to the consultants. So we did take that input. So they did form part of our what we heard report. And then finally, on the experimental farmlands, to the point, they are federal lands, but we have offered up a draft zoning that puts them as institutional, because that's what we see happening on the site today, and carrying that forward. But of course, any federal land has a process to go through if they were ever to determine something else they wanted to do. And they do consult with communities where they own land, when they go to Canada Lands or with other disposal tactics, if they ever were to dispose. I know nothing of their future plans. I just know we have looked at it and said those are institutional uses and put the institutional zone over top. So,
Thank you for that, but I think it's important from a community perspective that I think it's currently zoned institutional, and I understand, you know, they have a process, but nonetheless, it's important that they also know, and it's illustrative in the new zoning and development bylaw, that over the years, as long as I've been around here, it's strong support to make sure that there's no development on that property whatsoever. And that someday we can have a plan, something like you'd see with the Commons in Halifax or any other city. That's the heart of the city. And someday we're going to have a vision and be futuristic and really carve out something that's truly remarkable, so that the entire city and the province can be proud of. So when that day comes, who knows? But I just want to, for the record, I'm strong on that and will not compromise in any which way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Jacob, we did receive, and it was referenced earlier by our deputy mayor, about that anonymous zone down off Water and Pownell. It was signed, the letter that came to us was signed by stakeholders. And they are concerned. So this is an open, transparent letter that they sent to us because they believe in protecting that heritage character. And I want to defer to the deputy mayor because I think you've spoken to some of those stakeholders that like to, I don't see them always behind closed doors. I believe that they come out front on this. Go ahead, deputy.
Yeah, they weren't just stakeholders. I mean, they own those properties.
That's right.
They live in those properties.
That's right.
They are residents
Yeah.
of that ward and of that heritage anomaly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of that heritage cluster.
Yeah.
So, so they, they did send that letter. It wasn't confidential. They clearly
right.
said it was an open letter. And that's why I brought it up, why we identified that area from Pownell down to Havlin, or, yeah.
And
to,
Rochford.
Yeah, I'd like to,
Yeah, just let her finish.
yeah, to ensure that we respected that heritage area and left it as the five, I think it's 5 stories as of right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Twill?
yeah, I think that's a misrepresentation of what I was saying, but stakeholders. As the deputy mayor pointed out, these are property owners. They have a vested interest in that particular community, and they are open and transparent because we all got a letter, and every one of them signed it.
Yeah.
I'm talking stakeholders that don't have any investment. They don't live in the community, and they want to decide as to or recommend what should take place in a particular community. So it's two different things: stakeholders versus property owners. Two different phenomenons, two different definitions. Hope that clears it up.
Yeah, and is it possible, Jacob, that we can get a copy of those stakeholders that spoke to you, or is that a private list? No. Okay, could you send that out? I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
Like Councillor Twill.
Yeah,
But
I'd like to see
have
it too.
Yeah, I have a few questions that I'd like to ask, if that's all right. You said strong certainty means strong development. So that's what you're promoting here. Now, that's not just about business or stakeholders, it's about property owners, correct? Want to clarify that?
To the mayor, yeah, we believe that certainty. I am thinking about people who invest capital in redevelopment of land. I think we haven't talked about it explicitly in this meeting, but I will bring it up. Revenue is an issue in Canadian municipalities right now, and most of your revenue is driven by property tax.
Yeah.
You have some other streams of revenue, parking tickets, fines, fees, but mostly your revenue comes from property taxes. The bill on maintenance of the infrastructure that you own is constantly coming due on an annual basis. You create capital and operating budgets to maintain the services that you provide for your citizens. The cost to maintain that infrastructure is increasing quickly, and your ability to raise property tax revenue is always limited by how much capacity your citizens have to pay taxes. So we think a lot about the most efficient places to drive revenue for a municipality by ensuring that we put development in areas where you already have services, and we don't have to extend as many new services when you add density to the city. So if you own on St. Peter's Road a commercial property, and you are sitting on that because it is Zone C2, and you can operate the strip mall that you operate today forever because that's what you're allowed to do. And you now have a zoning bylaw that allows you to redevelop in a mixed-use form that lets you keep your commercial uses but add residential to that property as well. You know that you're allowed to do that. You know that you're allowed to do it without having to come to this room and ask for the discretionary approval of council. There are regulations in place that tell you what can be built on that site in a simple manner so you can understand your value, work with your bank, work with your capital to reinvest it in this city so that that property then generates more tax revenue in the future than it does today. And you've had no new expenses to allow that to happen, as you may have if you continue to extend into greenfield areas. Now, we need a balance of both because not everyone wants to live in apartments. You need to be doing greenfield, ground-oriented housing at the same time as mixed use. But really, this is why we have promoted these corridors. When I say the certainty provides capital, you have landowners in this city who have landowners that own land in other jurisdictions as well, and you are competing with other cities for where the capital will flow. It may go to Moncton, it may go to Amherst, it may go to Halifax, but if your rules are certain on what they can do on their land, there's an opportunity when they look at their portfolio that they invest in Charlottetown.
Yeah.
So that is what I meant when I said certainty leads to capital investment. I can't say it will happen on every privately owned property, but you are playing on a game of averages with the thousands and thousands of commercial properties that exist in this city. And when you allow people rights, you'll find the right people emerge who want to invest in this city.
And for Prince Edward Island, that could go to Stratford, Cornwall, or Summerside. Just on the slide 23, the variance. So is that a hard 10%?
Yes.
That's it? Like if someone comes in and says, I got 11%, like
There
you're going to
is
get
one-
that?
There's a condition for 15% in
Oh.
certain cases. Just let me read it. So
Oh, there is a 15% benchmark. Because some of the variances that we get are 50,
Yes.
80, 100?
So, reduce minimum setback step requirements for front, rear, side, or flankage yard by up to 15%. And for lot area, coverage, parking, and building height, it's 10%. So it's, and it's clear in the bylaw which parts of the regulation are variable by 15 and by 10. I apologize, I only mentioned the
Nope.
10 earlier for
I just-
simplicity, but there are some that are 15. But just like the 10, 10 does not mean 11 and 15 does not mean 16.
Okay.
So we are being hard on the numbers to put limits on these variances that your professional staff can approve.
And slide 28. So can you tell me or tell us how many municipalities across Atlantic Canada regulate parking?
How,
How many municipalities?
well, everyone regulates parking.
Okay, but you're asking us, just get out of the regulation.
To get out of regulation. I'm asking the 500 lot area through this draft regulation to get out of parking requirements in the 500 lot area. Through the rest of the growth areas, we're reducing the parking requirement to 0.5 spaces per residential unit as the minimum that would be acceptable. As I said, that's partially about reducing the cost of construction to encourage more investment in the area, but it's also to recognize that these areas have services that some people may be able to walk to, and they may be able to live with fewer cars. But it's still a market decision on the builder to build the parking or not. I can't tell you there are hundreds of municipalities in New Brunswick, dozens in Nova Scotia, and I believe almost 100 in PEI. So it's difficult to give you exact numbers on who's doing what, but cities of the same scale of Charlottetown across the Maritimes are looking at this and have done this. So we've done this in Wolfville. Moncton has done this in certain areas. Halifax has done this. I can't give you a comprehensive list off the top of my head.
Can we get it?
I will look for sources that have
Yeah.
researched this. I won't do new independent primary research to determine all of it.
And slide 35, because I took down these questions, the vertical datum. That vertical datum, you brought that up before.
Yeah.
So what's the elevation? Are you looking at,
It's on the
Because it's-
slide. 3.67 meters, Brad just whispered.
3 point what? About 10
I'm gonna
feet?
get to it. I'm going the wrong way. It's near the end.
Well, there it is, yeah.
Through the mayor to the
3.67.
council, Brad was right, 3.67 meters, Canadian Geodratic Vertical Datum,
Okay.
2015.
Okay. And slide 18, growing of zones, just as you said, Jacob, this was the zone and development bylaw back in 1979, right? And it was updated in 1999 with the one that we're currently using. And if memory serves me correctly, when the final vote was on the second reading, it was a 3-2 vote to adopt what we are using today.
Yeah.
So what we have in terms of zones I'm sure it multiplied or added on to 79, 1999, correct?
Correct.
Well,
Well, and just on residential alone.
yeah. I just want to say thank you, and I did forget someone. Counselor Duran? Are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here. Thank you.
Do you have a question or
Not
questions?
one. Thank you.
And David Gundrum is on the line. He was listening to the whole presentation. Counselor Matert, back to you. Hot mic.
I just wanted a clarification. When you asked the question about the parking restrictions outside lot 500, did you say you're reducing those by 0.5? Did you say reducing? So that's out in the residential areas outside lot 500. If we're going to reduce parking, where does the parking go? The average household probably has 2, 3, maybe even 4 cars. So where's it going? Is it on the street then? If the parking minimum is being cut in half, where's it going? Like, is it not a fair assessment to think that residential homes have at least a minimum of 3 cars?
So your current requirement for parking in single-family lots is 1 parking space per dwelling unit.
Sorry, one
One
parking
per
space.
dwelling unit. 1 per dwelling unit is a standard across, but as you've correctly identified, many single-family homes build longer driveways, wider driveways, or space to park multiple cars because most families own multiple vehicles. To that example, you're already not requiring parking that meets the market demand. You require less today than you see demand in these residential neighborhoods.
Yeah, okay.
We're suggesting that you back even farther off and let the market determine. So we don't believe that by reducing the requirement, you are going to necessarily see less parking built. But where a builder can rationalize and understand that there is options available, either they're building in a place perhaps for university-focused housing next to UPEI, and they know the students are coming and have a high likelihood of not having the same level of vehicles as a single-family homeowner, they may choose to build less than 1 parking stall per unit. So we're leaving that choice to them, and as a municipality, you're stepping away to not regulate the minimum, but you're not regulating a maximum. You're allowing them to build it if they want to build it, but you're not requiring them to build it to the same degree that you are today.
But if I was a new builder and I'm building, I would want to have to build less parking spaces because it's cheaper, correct?
Yes, but you also want to be able to rent your units.
Yeah, but they'll just tell them to park in the street. That's all they're gonna say to, they're developer, they don't care where they park. They're gonna say park on the street. Like, you only have 1 parking spot here, and if you're gonna rent 3, then park on the street.
I think
That's what I think is we're calling, reality here. That's likely what would happen. I can't imagine a developer is gonna say, I should build for a potential for 4 cars here, cost more money for, materials, whatever. I think they'll go for the minimum. That's my opinion. Thank you. And it's not a debate. Like, you're just putting it, I'm not debating you. I'm just,
yeah.
I just. try
And
to-
that's, to be clear, it's in the high density, the medium density residential, the growth node, and the growth corridor alone. So in all of the other zones, we are still requiring the same parking that you have in your current
Okay,
regulation.
so you
Just
didn't
in those,
specify that. So you're saying, sorry, repeat that again? So you didn't specify, or the mayor didn't specify, you just said outside the lot 500.
I said outside lot 500 on the growth corridors and the growth nodes.
Yeah.
But it does also include the residential medium density and the residential high density. So not the residential neighborhood, right? Those still have the 1 unit,
But
1
even
stall
there,
per
there's still
unit.
not a lot of development. It's probably in those other areas the development's happening, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where the development's happening,
I mean, it's a problem now. We know it's a problem now. All you do is drive through any new subdivision. They're parked all over the street. And there is parking for 3 and 4 cars, and there's 6 cars.
Yeah, but that's more those units where
Well, I
they are
don't-
renting out rooms.
Well, I don't know.
Ask Councillor
I don't know
McAleer.
that to be true. I mean,
What is?
could be 4 cars at my house easily, right? And then a visitor comes fifth. And so anyways, families are, 3 and 4 cars nowadays, it seems like. Anyway, okay, thank you. just for the
Deputy, did you just want to add just, and then?
Just to add on the parking thing, I think that where the city could regulate parking is on city property, which means the roads, the ditches, the sides of the roads. So if the city gets more into regulating what can and can't be parked on the sides of the roads, then that stops the people parking on the streets and encourages the homeowner that he has to create more parking in his property. So, I mean, that's an option instead. So we get out of the regulating of the properties, but we get more into the regulating of, you can't park on the road, no parking. Doesn't matter if it's summer or not, you can't park on the road.
It happens in winter.
Yeah, you can't park there, period. Maybe?
Councillor Beck,
Yeah,
wrap it up.
just, can you just, maybe for everyone again here, differentiate between RM and RH? What constitutes RM and RH? First, that's my first question.
Through the mayor to the councillor, we don't have a slide that articulates that specifically, so I'll go through it. So RM is medium-density residential. So in the RM zone, we're accommodating a range of medium-density dwelling types that allow for gentle densification, suitable locations of up to 3 stories and 1 dwelling unit per 1,000 square feet of lot area, or 1,200 square feet of lot area, sorry. So RM allows single detached dwellings, semi-detached duplexes, townhouses, and small multi-unit dwellings. So by small multi-units, those are up to 3-story buildings. So this is residential medium. Residential high density is the next higher level, and that's really looking at larger multi-unit dwellings. And they have a lot area minimum of 10,000 square feet. So these are large lots that have been zoned residential high density, and they are looking at multi-unit buildings up to a maximum of 4 stories. So residential medium density is 3-story, low-rise. Residential high density is 4 stories, but allowing more density on the site, not having the same density limits. If you look in the packages you've received in the past and today, Schedule A is your zone map, and residential high density on that map is a different shade of yellow. We go from lightest yellow being your residential neighborhoods, the medium residential neighborhoods are a little darker, and higher order residential is the darkest yellow. I'll try to pull on some examples here. So these are sort of the medium density and higher order residential are sort of the areas around the growth corridor or the growth nodes. So sort of cascading density from those growth nodes where we have really tall buildings, really a lot of density, and then you sort of cascade around. There's also some sites that already have 3-story. You have a lot of 3-story apartment buildings actually in residential neighborhoods, sort of on the edge of residential neighborhoods. So we really classified all those as residential medium density. It's going to allow people to continue to operate their 3-story apartment buildings, and when an opportunity to reinvest comes in, they may be able to get a little more density based on these new site standards. So we haven't upzoned too many properties. These are mostly formerly R3 and above. So in your 13 flavors of residential zoning now, you have a couple medium and high density zones. We've just converted those to a new language, and we've sort of pressed 3 of them into 1.
Okay.
So that's what medium and high density residential mean. They are strictly residential areas with a tiny amount of commercial allowed, so they are carrying forward with the current use.
And just to double check, so the 0.5 requirement applies to RM and RH
That's right.
and above?
Yeah.
So
Well, no, not and above. We'd say, and the growth corridors and the growth nodes.
Right.
So these are the areas outside the
Well,
500 lot.
they're the ones getting into the
Where you're allowing
multi-unit.
multifamily dwellings.
Yeah.
We've gone to 0.5 as the minimum parking requirement. And removing the city from the regulation at the one parking space per unit level.
Okay, and then going back to the 4 units as of right, each unit would require an individual parking spot, correct?
With an exception if they're within 400 meters of a bus stop, then
Right.
they can drop one of them,
You can drop one.
one parking spot.
Thank
And
you.
I think that's important context here, just around the discussion. specifically around parking. Reduction in parking requirements, you'll notice, is around some of those areas where we are already offering and expanding our transit service. So we want to be able to offer more flexibility for folks that are building in those areas where conceivably people would be using more transit. Additionally, as Jacob mentioned, that's recognized through the ADU provisions as well specifically. The other point I'll make on the parking is that the parking strategy recently went through Public Works Committee, so that will be coming to the next council meeting in early July, I believe. So that's kind of the piece separate and apart from the zoning bylaw on how we're managing parking overall.
Okay, is that good there, Counselor? Well, listen, just while we have them here, Michael, Donna, of the 8 initiatives, we can check out the new official plan, right? Accessory dwelling, can we check that one off, or is that going to be, okay? E-permitting, that's soon. Parking strategy, soon. Redevelopment for high-density multi-unit apartments? To come. Clarify design requirements to promote missing middle housing? To come. What? Okay.
None of these guys
Thank you.
have underground parking, right? He's doing it all as surface.
Counselor Drawn, you sure you don't know any questions?
No, don't need any. That's great. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, do you want to sum it up there, Deputy? Thank you for putting this together. And with
Well,
the team, with the
and
team.
thanks for what great conversation. So staff will create a report, and then we begin that formal process that Councillor Beck alluded to, where this will now start that planning process, where it will go to planning board with a recommendation for a public hearing, public meeting, which will come through council for council to either support staff's recommendation for that public hearing. That should happen in September. And then from there, from after the public hearing, and we gauge what the public wants, making any fine tuning to the draft, coming back through planning board, and for council for first reading in October and second reading at the next meeting. So that's basically what our next steps are. Yep. So encourage your residents, if you are out there door to door, encourage them that, public meeting is coming in October,
Yes.
and they should really, get engaged and come out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Jacob, we will be following up that meetings that we had with the stakeholders. We can get that sent out, great, because everything should be out front there so we can all know what's coming in, what's going out.
Yeah.
Yes, sir?
Yes, sir. Just want to reiterate that stakeholders and property owners, two different things, two different phenomenons, two different dynamics, two different definitions.
Okay, well, we'll get to know who they were.
Case closed.
Do we have a resolution to adjourn the meeting? Or wait, now, did I miss something? New business? No. Oh, no?